A lot to do. Great. I
Recording.
call the meeting of the Transportation Board of the Town of Brookline to order. It is 6:30 on the 7th of January, 2026. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
We will begin with public comment. If anybody would like to make a comment on an item not on the agenda, you can use the raise hand function, and I would be delighted to call upon you to make your comment to the board. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, please know there'll be ample public comment periods for each individual item. I see 13 people and no hands being raised. So we're going to close the public comment period, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Brian, would you mind if we just did roll quickly for the recording?
Sure, let's call the roll.
Richard,
Yep.
Len,
Present.
Nancy,
Present.
and Brian.
I am present.
Thank you.
Sam.
And I see Wendy is joining us momentarily.
Fantastic. Let's wait for her. Hey, Wendy, welcome.
Hi.
Wendy is present.
Wendy.
Hi, Wendy.
Present.
Hi.
She said hi.
Sam.
Good to see you.
You too.
So we're going to move on to our third item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. There's 5 items. I will read them. Approval of the November 12th, 2025 minutes as amended. Request for an on-street accessible parking spot at 25 Winthrop Road. Request for an on-street accessible parking space at 273 Mason Terrace. Request to restrict parking 60 feet from the crosswalk on the John Street eastbound approach to Green Street to improve intersection sightlines. Removing 1 existing metered parking space. Request to include a marked crosswalk with rectangular rapid flashing beacons on Hammond Street at the intersection of Hammond Street and Laurel Road as part of the upcoming Hammond Street construction project. Does any member wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda and discussed individually? Okay, seeing none, a motion and approval of this will approve all of the items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Nancy, is there a second?
Second.
Sam, you want to do the honors?
Richard? Is that a yes, Richard?
That was a yes.
Thank you very much. Nancy?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Len?
Yes.
And Brian.
Yes, thank you very much. Those
Thank
items
you.
are approved. Item 4 is updates. Anybody have a member update? Okay, seeing none. Let's do-
I'm working through the Hayes safety. Got a PTO meeting next week at the Hayes School with the principal and just moving that project along, getting public feedback.
Any other updates? All right, Dan Murphy, I believe the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, the director's update, we did send it out. I'm gonna do better and get this out earlier, but I have a few things I just want to call out. We did do water service works complete for Harvard. That's one of our big jobs this year. We also get all the work done ahead on Hammond. Excited about that and really like the process of making sure we've got everything done ahead before we get to the paving part. So that was very successful, a lot of work. Great help from the water and sewer division. One thing I wanted to also want to bring to your attention, Greensport is reducing active EV stations at the Fuller lot and the Kent Webster lot. At the Fuller lot, they're going from 20 ports to 6, and at the Kent Webster lot, they're going from 14 ports to 4. This is for the electric charging. The equipment's remaining right now, but some of these spots are going to be bagged so that others can park there. And soon, once they get them out, it'll be a little bit, but for now, people can use them.
Dan, is that because of underutilization?
Yes, yeah, they just weren't utilized enough, and that's the reason they wanted to do that. And so that's happened.
Okay.
The other one's important to me. I'm excited. APS signals. We're working on those. All signals in Brookline now have APS signal equipment, except for the Harvard Street, Washington Street, Kent Street, Davis. So it's basically 3 Washington Street locations that will be reconstructed as part of the Washington Street Complete Streets project. We also get some funding, SIP funding, usually to replace APS and countdown timer equipment on Beacon Street that has reached the end of its useful life. We've awarded the contract, and I think the equipment's here or will be here very soon. So that'll get going. In addition, which is great, we also were awarded a Complete Streets grant for over $300,000 to replace the remaining 90 APS and countdown timers. So we're scheduling that for bidding. So that's really good news. I'll just say a couple things on, as you may know, you'll hear about it later, but Harvard Street's on our list for road paving this year. And that basically extends from the city of Boston all the way down to Washington Street. So it's a full length within Brookline. We're getting that out to bid, hopefully the end of the month or just soon thereafter. And then, as you know, and I'll mention this, we've got the Hammond Street project, which has kind of grown. We had the signal that we were going to do the paving, the bonded wearing course first, and then do the signal. But because of the timing and getting all the utility work done, we've combined it into a big project. So it's going to get all that done this year. So those are the two big highlights for this year. And that's all I've got. If you got any questions, I certainly can take them. You can feel free to read the report after. And if you need anything, feel free to reach out.
Questions for Dan? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Good stuff.
We're going to move on to what is, I believe, Center Street lot discussion is up next. Meredith, I think that's you. If not, tell me who to recognize.
I would actually turn it over to Jessica DeRoy, and who's going to introduce Chris Dempsey.
Take it away, Jessica.
Oh, thank you guys for having us this evening. This is just a brief update that Chris Dempsey, our consultant from Spec Dempsey, will be providing. He has done the work to really get us to where we are today in terms of wrapping up the study of both the Center East and West lots, looking at what the potential would be for redeveloping the lot to be more than just a surface level parking. I will turn it over to Chris.
Who's this Dempsey guy? I don't know.
Well, Mr. Chair, I will identify myself, and then I have to explain why I'm walking right now. So I'm Chris Dempsey, representing Spec Dempsey, the town's consultant on this project, and I, of course, had the honor of serving on the Transportation Board and being its chair for a period of time, and serving with many of the current members, and grateful to the new ones who have stepped up. I have been so conditioned to be in town hall for these meetings that at 6:25 p.m. I walked into town hall expecting you all to be around a table, forgetting that you had moved to the efficient 100% virtual format. And so I'm currently walking back to my house.
You're very walkable.
Be able to get
Chris.
to a computer with my apologies for disrupting the meeting. So if you and staff are prepared to move to the next item, and then you can come back to Center Street. I think the next item is Chestnut Hill. It has all the same folks. That would give me time to get home again, with my apologies for disrupting.
You get one with us, Chris. Just one though. No, of course, we'll be happy to accommodate you, and thanks for all you do. And great job on the radio the other day. I heard your segment. All right, so we're going to come back to Center Street, and I want to know Jonathan is here. Hi, Jonathan. Welcome. Say something so we know you're here, please, for the recording. I know.
Hello.
All right, Jonathan's here. All right, so we're going to come back to Center Street, but first we will do 7:15. Actually, we can't do that because it's not, we're 30 minutes too quick. So
New business. There's new business, I'm sure, right?
let's talk about new business, Jonathan.
I don't have any new business. But we can talk about new business.
What is new business, Jonathan? Hi, Nancy, go ahead.
I have a question. What, if anything, is happening with the bridle path? I'm on that committee, but I haven't heard a word since we had our first meeting. What was it, Len? Back in September? Are there plans for us to meet again?
Dan or Commissioner? Anybody know? I don't know, Nancy.
Okay, I Just feel like there's a lot of wasted
Yeah,
time
that's
here.
for Dan to answer for the division.
I can say, I know we have, I thought we had, haven't got, I thought we were gonna get a next DRC meeting, scheduled or get rolling, and I will check in with Bill to make sure, but we're certainly moving right ahead. I know there's a lot of time getting spent on the Sea Branch coordination right now, but Bridle Path is moving. We're working with a consultant, and you'll hear something real soon.
Okay.
Hi, Nancy, just sort of an update to that. There was obviously the kickoff meeting that was just sort of framing, here's the project and the committee, and sort of some meet and greet for folks that were on that design review committee. There were 3 sessions along different segments of Beacon Street that folks were invited to attend. Community, businesses, etc. And our consultant is still working on the with their sub the base survey for Beacon Street, and with Mass DOT on kind of the utility and safety review with all of their parties. So a lot of that's going to be really important. I think before the design review committee will be able to have kind of a real meaningful conversation, but they are looking at later this winter, trying to get the group back together.
Yeah, and I'll add, we're trying to get there's a big road safety audit that has to occur, and that's kind of getting scheduled now. And I think they wanted to get through that before they get back rolling. So that's kind of a little bit of the holdup, but that's a big event that Mass DOT arranges.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so just on the Center Street lot question, Len, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you chaired the committee or were on the committee. Can you just talk about the process y'all went through maybe, and before we get into this presentation itself?
Sure, I served as the Transportation Board liaison for the Center Street Lots Committee. We had a number of meetings with the committee, and the consultants presented us with a number of different options. The first being keep the lot very similar to its current configuration. I think with adding some additional greenery, making it ADA compliant. And then they presented a few other options, all of which included a parking garage, 2 above ground garages options, and then 1 below ground garage option. In addition to the meetings, we met with the public at the Coolidge Corner Theater. I think it was titled Walkable Brookline. And so Jeff Speck gave a presentation about walkability in cities, and then following that presentation, they presented the different options that the committee was considering. And then we had a vote off to see which option the members of the public preferred. And I think you'll hear more about each of those options, and in particular, the one that the public seemed to prefer. Personally, I think there's more work to be done as far as converging to a solution. A lot of the people in the audience there spoke of too much parking in that option. And the parking was not their highest priority. Rather, it was green space and housing.
Okay.
Eventually, the committee did select an option, and you'll hear more about that. But I was in the minority along with one other person who we both believe that a large parking garage is not right for this space.
Yeah, I saw your minority report, and thank you for that. And thank you for serving on that committee. Really appreciate it. I think it's important to note this was, and Meredith, I see your hand is up. This was, I think, an economic development led process. So thank you for that. And we appreciate you folks taking the lead, and Len, thank you for serving on that. So Meredith, can I come back to you in a moment? Because it's now 6:45, which means we, within our policy, are within the 30-minute limit. So we can pick up Chestnut Hill. since the presenter of Center Street is not here. So I'm going to do the chair's prerogative and ask us to move to item 5B, discussion and action to accept the Chestnut Hill area commercial transportation related study. as a
Brian, Chris
planning
is here.
document. Chris,
is-
are you here? Oh, you are here. Well, look at that. So, thank you, Nancy. So, never mind what I just said. We're going to do Center Street lots after all. And it is a great pleasure to welcome you back, Chris, and the floor is yours, sir. Except we can't hear you now. Nope. Anybody else here, Chris, or is it just me? Nope.
Any better?
Yeah.
There we go. Again, thank you all for your patience and accommodation here. And I'm embarrassed that I was just in town hall about 15 minutes ago looking for you all, thinking back to the pre-COVID days. So appreciate that. I'm Chris Dempsey, a co-founder of Spec Dempsey. We're proud to be a Brookline-based firm. Our office is in the Arcade building, and both of our co-founders are Brookline residents. And we were honored to be chosen through a competitive process by the town of Brookline to help advance this study and visioning opportunity for the Center Street lots. It's been about a year-long process at this point with deep community engagement, and I'll share some examples of that. I think we've arrived at a really strong set of options with one preferred option identified by the committee through a vote of the committee. And where we are in the process is we'll be presenting this to the select board later in the month and asking for their approval to move forward with next steps. But we, of course, wanted to bring this before the transportation board first so that you are fully informed about the process and had an opportunity to weigh in, share thoughts, and ask any questions that you might have. I want to thank town staff who have been great supporters and proponents of this project, in particular, Jess and Meredith and Commissioner Shute, who I know is on, all of whom have been great allies in this process. And then I was expecting former select board member and former transportation board chair Mike Sandman to be on. He was the chair of the committee appointed by the select board, and I think led it very ably through the process, and maybe he'll be joining later tonight, but we really appreciate his efforts as well. So if there are any questions about process, I could take those now as I pull up my screen and share a little bit more about the history of the project.
Chris, I'd like you to talk a little bit just about the process. So your firm was selected through a competitive bid, you said, and then just sort of talk about what you did and who you did it with. And, it's Brookline. We love process.
Sure. So we were the lead of a team, and we had two other prominent team members as part of that bidding team. The first is Eisenberg Projects, which actually got its start in Brookline many years ago. They are a leading creative and design firm that works to engage and enliven real physical spaces. So their clients are mostly in Greater Boston, but really around the country, and include many municipalities that want to bring new life to existing public places. So they led the tactical urbanism portion of this project and actually constructed a parklet in a few of the parking spaces just near the Coolidge Corner Theater. And that really allowed the public to think about the lots differently. Most people in Brookline, only know these lots for what they are today, which is convenient parking for Coolidge Corner, but not much more. There's a history about how this became a parking lot that Len has highlighted in some of his work as a committee member, in which we very much appreciate. But that allowed them, the Eisenberg work really allowed people to see other potential for the lot. And then the second core partner in this work has been Stantec, which is a multinational engineering firm with a very strong Boston office. In fact, there's a unit of Stantec called Stantec Urban Places, which works internationally but is based in Boston. And their team was helping us with some of the parking analysis in terms of the supply and availability of parking. You all may know them from their existing work for the town on the Coolidge Corner parking study and now the Brookline Village parking study. They also helped us with some of the cost estimate information, and we've got pretty decently wide range of cost estimates here, but we feel comfortable sort of within that wide range. I should say one more thing about the process here, which is that we will be presenting to the select board in January, and we're hopeful that they will agree with the committee about steps forward and enable a next step, which would be a request for information where we go out to the private sector community developers, and including nonprofit developers and affordable housing developers, and ask them to test the conclusions that we've come to in this study and to provide some feedback on what they would look for if this effort moved to an RFP, a request for proposal, which is a future step, many months or even years down the road. The RFI is a request for information, which is just a way, without any commitment from either side, to just better understand how this proposal could play out in the real world. And so we're looking forward to those next steps and hoping that the select board will endorse them. I see that that Chair Salmon has joined now, and he may want to add some more context or information as part of this discussion.
Thanks, Chris. No, I think I think almost all of that, and I think the sensible thing to do is to see if there are any questions from board members.
Well, Michael, let me just also say welcome, and it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And I'm seeing that Mike may also have made the same mistake I did, which is show up in town hall. Mike, is that town hall behind you?
That's town hall. I'm in room whatever 103.
So I,
well conditioned.
So
I did exactly the same thing.
So Brian, get down here. What's the matter with you guys?
It's too slippery.
And that explains again why we're a little bit behind in
the transportation board. Wait.
So I don't want to belabor this, but I do think it would be worth going through some of these slides because, Mike, I haven't had the chance to do that yet, and I'll try to be quick here. But I think the imagery is really important to folks understanding what's being proposed.
Yes.
So here is the study area, or the subject lots, the Center Street East lot, which is the one that I think the general public is most familiar with as a place to park. And then the Center Street West lot, which is, of course, the longtime home of the Brookline Farmers Market, very popular and important community institution, and is also home to commercial permit parking most days of the week, as well as general public parking on Sundays. Here's the timeline for the project. As I said, it was really a full year exercise, and we're proud to be sort of rounding it out within a year of the project start. I have some images here of some of the ways that we engaged both the committee and the public at large, and that included some walks of the site, one on a very, very bitterly cold day, but we made it through and survived. One on a nicer, warmer day in the spring. We had a roundtable with some of the beloved small businesses and institutions that are part of the Coolidge Corner community. They were very clear with us that maintaining as much parking as possible was an important priority for them, and it became a principle of the work to try to maintain as much parking as possible because of what we heard, not just from these small businesses, but we did hear that from them in the roundtable. And I should mention that Julia, the owner of Fire Opal, was a member of the committee and represented the business community throughout the course of the process. We got to do a great event at the Senior Center and have a roundtable with seniors, some of whom live within walking distance of the Senior Center and others of whom drive, and for whom that parking is important, and all of whom love and cherish Coolidge Corner for what it is and what it can be. We had a number of meetings and engagements with the staff of the farmers market. Abe, the current director of the farmers market, was a really helpful resource for us. And you can see him here looking over some initial designs and maps that we created. And we feel that this plan was very much informed by their input and we're glad that they have encouraged us to continue to pursue this idea and this concept. And here's some more examples of our team walking the farmers market. We had a community survey that was responded to by over 700 people from across the community, even from some surrounding communities as well, but largely was filled out by residents, and we got important feedback from them. I mentioned already the parklet, and I want to again credit Eisenberg Projects for their work to design and lead this. And I love this photo again of people enjoying the parking lot in a different way than they're used to. And here's another example. So, people of all ages can appreciate the change that can happen when you think differently about the existing space. At Brookline Day in September, we also asked younger members of the community to draw their vision for what the parking lots could be. And we have some great examples here. Children suggesting piles of coins, and parks and water fountains and a petting zoo and all sorts of great things that we didn't land on exactly, but we certainly incorporated their inspiration. And on September 10th, we had an event that drew more than 200 people, mostly residents of Brookline, to the main theater in the Coolidge Corner Theater, where we walked through both the design process. We talked about principles of good walkability, of which Coolidge Corner is lucky to have many already, and then the designs that we had developed in partnership with the committee and staff and the community over the course of the project. As you think about the important components of good design for these lots, one of the things we really want to call out here are the existing pedestrian through lines, intentional choices made by prior planners and designers to increase the porosity of this network of streets and pedestrian paths. These are really, really important. Maybe the best and most important one in some ways is the one that goes all the way from Winchester Street under that sort of archway under apartment buildings, and then all the way through to Harvard Street via pedestrian paths, although somewhat interrupted by the parking lots, which do not have a pedestrian path in them. And so thank you to Len for briefly describing the options that we and the committee considered. The first one that he mentioned here is called the Grove, which does not create any new parking structure, but really just brings more greenery and tries to preserve as much parking as possible while also adding trees by changing the configuration of the space. The second option, which we call the side lot, does create structured parking along Center Street. It shields some of that structure with new housing. You can see really 4 different new types or buildings, residential buildings that are incorporated in this plan. Can you see my mouse here as I move it? Yeah. So this new building shielding the parking from a new plaza. These here, which would be sort of townhomes, and then 2 other residential buildings. And while this building here, which is the CVS and the specialty grocery store, is not in play for immediate conversation, we were able to create a space that has 3 really good sides with active fronts. You can imagine retail and restaurants in the first floor of at least these 2 buildings and maybe all 3 buildings, creating a really lively plaza and civic space in this option. And so lots of interest in that, the side lot. The next option is it's called the Colonnade, which is a more creative and artistic parking structure in many ways, with a elevated or taller first floor that allows the creation of some open space underneath, as well as some new plaza space. And then finally, the underground, which puts the parking underground at great cost, but then that cost is paid for and compensated for by a taller building to fund that underground structure. And this is sort of roughly the scale and size of building that you would need to be able to pay for the cost of an underground lot there. And so, as mentioned, we polled the public at the Walkable Brookline event at the Coolidge Corner Theater with more than 200 attendees. And you can see here the results of the polling that we did, because we're in a movie theater, we used a movie star system here. So 1 was a flop and 5 was a blockbuster. And you can see that option 3, the side lot, and apologies that the options don't line up exactly with the numbers by which I presented them tonight. Option 3 was the most popular when it came to kind of a basic movie star rating. But we also decided to competitively pit these options against one another to sort of force a choice here. So we put the Grove up against the Colonnade. We were somewhat surprised that the Colonnade actually won that matchup and advanced to the finals. On the other side of the bracket, you see the side lot and the underground, and the side lot really trounced the underground, setting up the final matchup between the side lot and the Colonnade. And the side lot was the clear winner there with 187 votes to 46 votes for the Colonnade. So kind of no matter which way you think about the ratings and the rankings here, the public, at least as it was represented at that event with more than 200 people, pretty strongly and clearly preferred the side lot of the 4 options that were presented. So this is the option that will be going before the select board in January. I want to be very clear that it's not for a final approval of any kind. It's just to sort of sense check with them that this should continue to the next step of the process, which is the RFI that I mentioned. And I think we're excited about a lot of the components here, including being able to retain much of the parking that many community members asked for, creating new housing in the heart of Coolidge Corner. We know that's a wonderful place to live, and the opportunity to provide some more housing, including some affordable housing, maybe significant affordable housing there, I think is a real benefit. And then maybe especially the creation of this new public plaza. If you think about Coolidge Corner today, there's not necessarily a great place to be out in the public, just kind of sitting and enjoying your time. There's not really necessarily a place where you would tell your neighbor or your relative, I want to meet you in Coolidge Corner. Let's meet at XYZ location, and you have a place to just kind of hang out. This would provide that, but it would provide much more than that, because you could envision this plaza being the center of community events and concerts and political rallies and arts festivals. And then, of course, the farmers market. This would be the new home of the farmers market just across the street, with upgrades, including things like outlets for the vendors that today have to run a generator to be able to power any power needs that they have, electrical needs that they have. So some numbers on the side lots. Again, these are, many of them are estimates, but with our partners at Stantec, we estimate the cost of building the parking structure and building out the plaza to be roughly $30 million. If we're wrong and we're 20% off and there's a 20% cost overrun, that brings it to 37 million. For 40% off, that brings it to 43 million. But it does create 80 to 100 housing units, and allows the preservation of existing parking and actually the creation of new parking that could be used by the residents and potentially deeded or reserved for residents of the new housing, so that we're sure that they have a place to park. This is the potential process going forward, again, subject to select board approval and to continued support from staff. But we have completed the exploratory study. We are hopeful to win approval for next steps with this request for information. We would open that up to the private sector and anyone else that would want to respond, ask for their responses in the fall of 2026, the fall of this year. That would inform then a warrant article process that would have the town change the zoning to allow the development as envisioned here. That zoning would be adopted by town meeting, probably at the earliest would be the May-June 2027 town meeting, so over a year from now. And we would also go through then an RFP process subsequent to that vote that would be a more formal commitment from a potential developer to actually join a partnership, do a public-private partnership with the town to actually build what you see here. And so the idea is that the private developer would pay for the construction, all or most of the construction of the parking structure and the plaza, and in exchange would have the right to build some new housing, and that's how they would be compensated for the outlay that they make for the parking structure. So This is probably the fastest possible timeline, and there's certainly opportunities to slow this down, but it probably can't speed up very much. And so at the earliest, we're talking about, basically 2 years from now that this public-private partnership would be affirmed, and you might think of construction starting in 2028. There's a very long way to go, much public process, much more community and civic engagement. And again, we're grateful to the Transportation Board for being open to this discussion and providing any feedback tonight about how we did and about next steps. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for all the work. Meredith or anybody want to say anything before we open it up to board discussion? No? Okay. So let's turn to the members of the board. Initial thoughts. Len, since you were our rep to that committee, why don't I ask you to go first? And we also have your minority report, but feel free to say it in words if you want.
There are parts of the side lot option that I like. I like the plaza and the additional housing, some of the trees that are going in. But we had a parking consultant come and give us a presentation at the Transportation Board. And they told us we have more than enough parking. But one of the things we don't have enough of is wayfinding. And one example of that is the Courtyard Marriott parking garage has 141 spots. And it's frequently over half empty. And so to spend over $20 million on a 5-story parking garage just doesn't seem to me like the best use of our resources. And it's not consistent with what we want to do as a town in terms of climate action and reducing our pollution and encouraging mode shift away from automobiles to more sustainable forms of transportation.
Thank you, Len, and thanks for representing us on that committee. Nancy, I see your hand.
Yeah, first of all, hi, Chris. Nice to see you again. I wanted to know, what is the difference in the number of parking spaces? So you had a number there about how many parking spaces there would be under the new plan. It was 300 something. What is the current number of parking spaces?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Great question. And it's great to see you again as well. So the current number of parking spaces is 192 in total across the 2 lots. So this adds at least 100 parking spaces and probably a little bit more, which would be roughly 1 per new unit of housing that is proposed, a little bit more than 1 per new unit of housing.
And my second question concerns, and part of this is really probably just being very dependent on what's existing now and trying to figure out, how one would accomplish certain things. But so I think, for example, the CVS is key. We're losing drugstores all over the place. And that CVS, it seems to me, is sort of really, really critical to Brookline in terms of, access. There's also a couple of, there's some restaurants there that, people do takeout a lot. You've also got, sort of ride share, ride app people. The Center Street lot, one of the benefits is that aside from the fact that you can park people, particularly seniors and those with disabilities, whether or not they need an accessible space, they can park very close to the CVS, run in, pick up their drug prescription and leave, which seems to me is going to be a lot harder to do with, the parking garage is a lot more work. It's harder to access. And like picking up takeout, where are the cars going to go? When you want to get ramen, where are you going to put your car? Because very hard to do that on Harvard Street. And ride share. You're going to have a fair number of people, coming by Uber, and have you thought at all about those sorts of questions? I'm very aware that that's, very not terribly forward-looking, but there's certainly questions that I have about, the current use of the space and how that would change under your plan.
Yeah, thank you for those great questions. And I really appreciate you raising in particular the issue of people with disabilities and handicapped access, which having served with you on the board, I know is a passion of yours and something you've always been great at raising. I think the first thing I would say in response is that it's really important for everyone to know, and it's especially true I think of people that do not have a disability that think the parking lot sort of works fine today. But the parking lot today is not ADA accessible. There are very few curb cuts. There's not good access for people that are trying to cross that lot, and you often see, for example, people in wheelchairs that are forced to roll in those chairs in the drive lane because they can't get onto the sidewalk because there's no curb cut. I experience, not the same, of course, but a small version of that, pushing a stroller now with a 2-year-old, and we're often in the street because the sidewalks are not accessible or they're too narrow. There's often recycling bins and trash bins that are being left, and there are a couple examples where there are utility poles and streetlight poles that are literally in the middle of the sidewalk, and it's absolutely impossible to get around. So I think there's broad consensus that the lot has to change to be made more accessible. And then the question is how to do that in a way that also supports other goals that the town has. We did not get to the level of design in detail to plan out like exactly where handicap spots would be in the new parking arrangement, but I imagine that there would be many on the first floor of the garage that would be pretty accessible and may even increase the accessibility relative to what's there for handicap spots today in terms of access. And I think you're raising some really good points about pickup and drop off and short-term parking. And those are things that would have to be managed with a combination of different things. And that could include, different regulations along the street and existing street lots, and also maybe pricing structures within the parking structure that could incentivize certain types of parking there, or shorter term or longer term parking. That's a sophistication around parking that we don't really have in the Center Street lots today. That would be that is already technically possible, but I think would come with a new garage and the technology improvements that would be associated with it.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Nancy. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Hey, Chris. Couple questions for you. One, you mentioned the resident parking equation was roughly 1-to-1 for units. How did you guys arrive at that?
Well, so the really simple math here, and I'm going to round my numbers, is there are 200 spots, public spots there today. And when I say public, that includes spots that are permitted for commercial users. So 200 publicly owned spots today. The side lot proposal creates roughly 300 spots total and roughly 100 housing units. And again, those are round numbers. We actually create probably fewer housing units and more parking spaces, but not by much. So the rough numbers are 200 today, 300 in the future, with 100 new units of housing.
So was that increase intentional for the amount of housing, or was it just a happenstance?
No, there is intention. Well, I would say there is intention behind preserving parking that is there today. I think the committee made the decision. I want to be clear, it wasn't the consulting team, but the committee as a whole made a decision that the politically viable path for this project was to preserve the parking that was there today. And then I think there was also a sense that while certainly not everyone who would move to new housing in Coolidge Corner would need or want a vehicle, and the data is very clear that there are many more people or many more residents than there are cars in Coolidge Corner. And so it's one of the great places in Greater Boston to live without a car. Overall, there would be sort of demand and expectation from some future residents, and likely from a private developer, that they would be able to have some reserved parking spaces associated, with the construction of the housing and accessibility of the housing. And so that could change in the future, there could be a determination made through the RFI process or the RFP process that less parking is needed, or maybe more parking is needed, and that could be a discussion that the town has. But we felt pretty comfortable speaking, for the design team, and I think speaking, representing the will of the committee as a whole, that the numbers we landed on were reasonable.
So this number of 300, that this is really like a starting point. It's not necessarily a viability standpoint at this right now.
I think we'd be reluctant to have the garage get much larger than it is. It would need to be taller, and then it starts to get taller than some of the surrounding buildings in a way that the community may not accept. I think it could be smaller, and I think
I wasn't thinking larger, but yeah, sure.
It could be smaller, but I think that that's a conversation that the town needs to have, and also a future private development partner needs to have with the town about what will actually work for the economics.
And I would assume that in future scenarios, we'd be able to do similar things that we've done with 40B projects and keep those spaces detached from the units if need be, and so forth. It's not necessarily something, unless it's written into the private partnership, public-private partnership. The other question I have regards the cost and the potential for overrun, and how that would be borne on the developer, right? Would they, in that scenario, let's say it's the 40% over. In that scenario, would they be able to build their buildings taller to recoup? Would the town owe them money? What's the scenario there?
So we'll learn more about that. That's a great question. We'll learn more about that in the RFI process, which again is a non-binding information gathering and raising process. And then any finer details or final details on that would be worked out as part of the RFP development process and be tested by town council and I think many other lawyers and financial experts about what's possible and what's viable there. So I think it's too early to say exactly what the arrangement would be, but we'll learn more about that over the course of the next 6 months to a year in terms of what might be viable. I think I'm sure that staff, the select board and others will be very attuned and sensitive to appropriate sharing of risk so that the town is not burdened with developer costs from any potential future overruns.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Thanks. I was also trying to get a sense of the numbers and what the implications of the numbers are. So if you sort of build the max housing in your range and the max number of parking spaces, you're adding something like 145 parking spaces. So a little bit more than housing, one per unit, right? Like another 30 or something. So in this range, the 300 to 335, what's the implication of the two extremes of that? Like, I don't know how many parking spots are on a floor. Does that add or remove a floor depending on where you land in this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Wendy. That range would not remove a floor. That more accounts for things like how much space ramps and elevators are taking up, that kind of thing. You're looking more at like 80 spaces per floor, something like that. So this is not what we created, is not an engineering document. It's a concept that is tested against standards and best practices for parking garage construction, and we feel confident about the range that we developed. But it's it's going to come down to the finer design details as this structure is actually engineered to know where within that range we would land.
Okay, and then I'm just curious whether the issue that Len raised about the Marriott, I think it's the Marriott parking, whether that came into this at all. And this is also partially a town question, because I know this issue about the wayfinding signs has come up a lot. So I'm just curious whether in terms of like thinking about the need and whether the full number, whether there needs to be full replacement of what's there now, was taking into account what we know about what exists and is not used in Coolidge Corner or not. And also just, I mean, I know this is outside of your purview and more of a town thing. And again, it's something that's come up before, but it does feel like we should be able to see what sort of consider designs under the conditions of also having these wayfinding signs around, since we do have this other parking lot.
I'll defer in a second to both Mike and Meredith on this, but I think the town does have the benefit of some time here. As I said, like the absolute earliest, if everything goes smoothly, which would be pretty rare, as we know, for our political processes, the absolute earliest that you're looking at construction is the year 2028. And so there's time to incorporate and implement many or all of the recommendations that were included in Stantec's Coolidge Corner parking study. And the town may find that, in fact, using technology, using wayfinding, maybe even using some pricing tools, that demand can be managed in a way that frees up more spaces in the lot and reduces the number of spaces needed in a future parking structure, which would be to everybody's benefit in terms of a cost savings and the ability to use that space and those resources in different ways, whether that's for a larger public plaza or for more housing or more subsidy of housing, whatever it is that the town prioritizes. So I know that town staff are working on some wayfinding, and I'll defer to them and to Mike to say more on this.
Meredith, do you want to say something on that?
Yep. So just very quickly, so the Coolidge Corner parking study was another one of our ARPA funded project, as is the Center Street lot study. And we intentionally sequenced it so that we had the benefit of the Coolidge Corner parking study and an awareness of parking needs dynamics in the Coolidge Corner area. So we had that for context as we were moving forward with a vision for the Center Street lots. What I will say is that I agree with everything that Chris included in his answer in terms of, we will have some time to implement some of the Coolidge Corner parking study recommendations, and that might impact our determination about what we need in terms of preserving public parking or adding an additional parking for private development. But I do just want to point out that the implementation of the Coolidge Corner parking study recommendations are going to be sort of complex. I think the Stantec conclusion was that there is adequate parking in Coolidge Corner if we move forward with negotiating arrangements with like private lot owners about how there might be public access during off hours and that sort of a thing. So that will be very complex. And we haven't negotiated those before. And then the other point about the Marriott, I think that's absolutely a resource that we need to use more effectively. But there are other considerations in terms of the zoning for that property and the agreements that were included in the negotiation when the town negotiated that arrangement with the Marriott. So there's still a lot to think through and sift through, and I don't think we're going to be able to make those shifts immediately. So I just wanted to set expectations in terms of what we're going to need to explore to answer the very good question that you raised, Wendy.
Thanks.
You'll say,
Can
Wendy?
I weigh in here?
Yeah, Michael, you're please. Floor is yours, sir.
Yep. Thanks. I think it might be useful to step back just a moment. I arrived in Brookline 51 years ago, and at that point, there was some beginning discussion about what can we do with the Center Street lot. So that's for about 50 years or so. People have been talking about, is the lot adequate? Does it work very well, and so forth. And this is perhaps the first time that someone has put together a concept that looks like it would provide continuity of parking resources and perhaps expanding them, housing and public space all together. But it's just a concept. And what we're looking for, well, what we will be looking for from the select board is permission to go out and present the concept to developers and say, what do you think? And my guess is that when something finally happens, it will be somewhat and perhaps substantially different from from the concept, but the concept is the place to start. And I think it's really important to recognize that there are a lot of very good detailed questions that we can ask about the side lot design. But honestly, I think the main thing that we're looking for is to make sure that you, on the transportation board, you understand the overall approach, which is to say, there's something else that could be done here. It could be used for a combination of parking garage, housing, and open space. Here's one way of doing it. And we want to keep you informed about the fact that we're going to the select board and saying, please give us permission to go to the next.
Michael, you froze on us there. Say the last bit again.
What we're asking for is, we want to keep you informed to the, about the fact that what we're going to be doing is going to the select board and asking them for permission to go for the next step, which is, to ask developers, well, what do you think? And what would you do instead?
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Richard, go ahead, sir.
Chris, Mike, great project and everything, so appreciate everything you're doing there. I actually like the colonial piece because it gives us that cushion of parking. We're looking at, Vision Zero on the streets around and we're repaving Harvard Street, and there may or may not be opportunities to reduce street side parking, and having the flexibility of additional parking in the parking lot is great. And I found that the Colonial gave us that additional cushion. If we go forward with the bridle path, Beacon Street is losing parking, probably about 100 parking spaces if the bridle path goes forward. And as we just continue to work on Vision Zero with street initiatives, it would be great to see the Center Street parking lot have that additional parking. We're going to spend $30+ million, I assume, of all our taxpayer dollars. And I like to see, some of those people would like to be able to see a benefit of additional parking. Also with the Colonial, it gives you that additional housing piece, which obviously we're all looking to support. And that's just my take on it. Overall, it's great we're finally doing something with that parking lot 51 years later, Mike.
Commissioner, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Aaron Chute, Commissioner of Public Works, for anyone in the audience that may not know. I just wanted to say that what an incredible process this was, and I've worked with at least 3 former directors of planning and community development and economic development with a whole host of different ideas about what to do with this parking lot. It really is so forlorn. It's not accessible, but it's a tremendous opportunity. And with Michael Salmon's incredible leadership, the committee was diverse and engaged and bold, and they really listened to everybody. They had meetings with staff. They engaged the public in a whole host of different ways. And I have to say, it's really been the most exciting kind of community engagement public project that I've seen in Brookline for a long time. And, this really could be truly transformative for Brookline. So I just really appreciate the creative thinking, the incredible work from Spec Dempsey, and that it's actually coming with a funding plan and next steps. And it's a concept. I think, to Nancy's point, there are details that staff and boards and commissions would really want to be involved in to make sure that everything works the way that we would want it to work in the future for the community. But it's been nice to see the excitement. It was the absolute best public meeting I've ever been to at the Coolidge Corner Theater. So I just think really well done for everyone involved on this.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. Much obliged. Anything else from board members before we turn to the public? Okay. If you'd like to make a comment, if you're a member of the public, you can use the raise hand function and I will call upon you in the order in which I see. Oh, your twin disappeared. I see Emily Savos, please.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Sammy Savos and I'm with Emily Savos, my sister.
Hello.
We live on 41 Center Street. We were wondering if we don't actually know if this is like the right place or time to share like comments about this garage idea because we have arguments against it as people who live here, and we're not sure if this is the right place to share those opinions.
Fire on ahead, Sammy. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so we've been like reviewing the same study that we were just talking about. And I do want to point out that the majority of responses, of 783 responses, 583 of them were from visitors. They were not from residents. And so I want to share, I guess, our feelings that as people who live here, we really don't want to have a massive garage right outside our windows. It'll contribute to noise pollution, air pollution from car exhaust, light pollution. We actually used to live next to a garage and like from the same distance away, and it was just really awful. We also see in the study that even with, the majority of the respondents being visitors, like most people just want a green space and a place to see each other and be with each other. And more parking is a pretty low priority. So having, wanting a more walkable Brookline being kind of the focus of this study, I guess, it doesn't seem that like adding this big parking garage actually furthers that goal. So yeah, we just wanted to share our feelings because we're not really sure where else we can go with this, and we don't want this plan to move forward. So thank you for listening to us.
Did your sister want to say something, or is that her raising her hand somewhere else?
That's actually our mom.
That's your mom. Okay. Well, does your sister want to say anything?
No, we're in full agreement. We have gone over this together. We've really been looking over this together. So
Okay.
what Sammy said, I say.
Well, thank you, Emily and Sammy. And now I would love to hear from Mom.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
This is Mom and Dad, actually. I just wanted to add on to what they're saying and clarify, because we've been talking about this for quite a while within our family. The condo that we live in is literally right next door to the Center Street lots. That's why we're discussing the garage particularly, because the only view out the window is the space where they will be placing the garage in this particular side lot plan. So the view outside the one window, or rather 3 windows, but all look at the same place, instead of being the sky, the trees, what everyone normally sees, will be a 5-story concrete structure. I mean, it's a really horrendous outcome for us that, and when we mentioned it earlier, all we got back was, oh, well, don't worry, we'll put some greenery on that garage. And I can't imagine that there's anyone who would find that to be an acceptable solution to lose. Imagine someone changes your front view window, your only view window, to be a 5-story concrete garage. It's horrific. And as my daughter said, they bring noise pollution, they bring light pollution, they bring auto pollution, and also they would disrupt our quality of life, reduce our quality of life, and in addition, they would also reduce our property value, because who would ever want to, should we want to sell, buy a property where you stare at the garage? So our request would be that the garage be considered to be moved to the other side of the lot instead of directly in front of our condo. If we couldn't get it altogether removed from the project, to get it moved to the other side of the lot, so at least we don't have to stare at it. We don't really know where else to go with these, issues and requests. Obviously, we're deeply concerned about it.
Well, let me take that real quick. So this is, as been said a few times, this is a very preliminary conceptual design, and we are, if this ever gets built, it'll get built years from now after a significant amount of public process. So I hear your concerns, and we are taking that in. One member of this board has already expressed his concern about a structured parking garage. So you're not alone, and we definitely hear what you have to say. This certainly will not be built tomorrow. I think as
We hear you. And I only want to say that we just want to get into the process before all the plans are made. We don't want anyone to have to spend money to undo something. We want to make sure we kind of get in on the ground floor of this so that it doesn't move forward and move forward and move forward. And then 3 years from now, we're fighting a developer instead of the committee.
I don't know, Chris, do you want to respond?
Actually, if you
Thanks,
don't mind,
Brian.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
No,
Mike,
Michael,
go ahead.
please.
And I just want to make a note about the survey after Mike does. So go ahead. Mike.
Right. So that was a really interesting comment about sort of perhaps flipping the housing with the garage, moving the garage down towards Beacon Street and the housing up to the other end, because I would assume that looking at a building, hopefully an attractive building, would be a very, very different situation than looking at a garage. But it's actually, that's a very useful comment, and it fits exactly with what I was saying and what Brian just said, that this is an overall concept. Let's see what comes back. But it's a valid concern, and I looked at that condo from the current lot, and you are looking over a parking lot, but you're not looking into the eyeballs of a garage. So I understand the issue, and let's. The one thing I can promise is that at least as long as I'm involved in this, we'll continue to listen very carefully to that.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. I just want to, I appreciate and respect those comments. I just want to make sure that I share the data from the survey, because the survey was referenced and there was a statement about majority being visitors. So the actual data, which is included in the final report, shows we asked every respondent for their zip code. So 61% of respondents were from the 02446 zip code, which is the Coolidge Corner zip code. That's 61%. 22% were from the 02445 zip code, which is just south of 02446 and is also in Brookline. And then 7% were from 02467, which is Chestnut Hill and includes parts of Brookline, Newton, and Boston. So if you add up those three, that's 90% of respondents were in a zip code that corresponds with a Brookline address or a nearby address, and only 10% were from other zip codes, including Alston, Brighton, Jamaica Plain, Needham, and Newton, et cetera.
Thanks for clarifying that. Jonathan, do you want to come in on something?
Yeah, I just had another question, and it actually has to do with Harvard Street, believe it or not. So I'm sure a few people are aware that Harvard Street doesn't have the best multimodal abilities or facilities. And I am wondering how this parking garage, and if this parking garage was considered and the size of this parking garage was considered in relation to the on-street parking on Harvard Street and the abilities to better accommodate and meet our goals of Vision Zero on a roadway such as that, where there are a lot of demands at play.
That's a pretty broad question, Jonathan, in fairness.
Understood. It's more of a yes or no. Did we consider Harvard Street and the parking lot as one, or is this just a Center Street discussion? Center Street.
I imagine, and Chris, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that this was a discrete Coolidge Corner Center Street lot study. I take your point that we don't really look holistically at the town or at its major corridors as a whole in these cases. We do in other cases. I'm not sure that that is within the scope of this project. But Chris, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right, Brian. I mean, I think Jonathan is raising a great question about the use of the right of way of Harvard Street, but it was beyond the scope of what we were asked to do on this study.
Beyond the scope of what you're asked to do in the study, but not necessarily should this continue forward, something that could be considered and, well, for all intents should be considered, because there's
Are you suggesting that
a
we
once in
add-
a generation opportunity there.
Are you suggesting we add additional parking in Center Street and subtract it from Harvard Street?
Not necessarily, but if we're 100 spots over, I mean,
Okay. No, you're right. It's important that we think about this stuff holistically. It's just difficult when we do project-based planning to do that. But
We
I
did
guess
have
not
some,
not to go deep into the weeds, but you know, if I was to say I'd rather have a safe bicyclist on Harvard Street than and another parking spot on Center Street on the Center Street lot, I'd choose that 10 times out of 10.
Michael,
we did have a discussion, generally speaking, that was raised in particular by, well, just by Len and by Moshe Ben Akiva, who is a member of the committee as well, and they put together their minority report, partly based on thinking about the whole picture. And I'm a cyclist myself, and I absolutely sympathize, or agree, never mind sympathize, with the statement that I'd rather have a safe parking lane on Harvard Street. Sorry, cycling lane on Harvard Street. All of that needs to be worked in, and one of the purposes of sending out a request for interest and subsequently a request for proposal is that we will not just have our brains, but the brains of other people who are looking at this and trying to figure out how to wrap this all together.
thank you, Michael. Marion Friedman, go ahead, please. Marion Friedman Gerspan?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay. I'm concerned about the word walkability. What you're saying is, when I hear it, is you really don't care about anybody who's mobility limited. We are talking about 20% of the town being seniors. Many of them are concentrated in the Coolidge Corner area. Demographics alone, no ideology, just aging. The baby boomers are aging, and it's expected to be 30% of the population. Some may bike, some may walk long distances. Many will not be able to do so. And I think they're getting short shrift. I think I did write a short minority report. I think there needs to be much more inclusion, no matter how it comes up, according to what Jonathan said. I think we need to talk about where the bridle path fits into this, where the planning for Babcock Street fits in, where Harvard Street fits in. And finally, the Stantec study was 2 days and a weekend in early May. It did not count the days of the farmer's market. It did not count Marathon Week. It did not count the shopping weeks before Christmas. It did not count graduation weeks. I think for whatever reason, it underestimates the demand and also the needs of residents. I live on a street with 19 apartments, none of which have their own parking spaces. We're dependent on the lot. We're dependent on overnight parking. We're dependent on our guests being there. I think we have to look, and again, the town's going to have to decide its values, but Vision Zero is not the only thing. There's also concern coming out of Human Services about senior isolation. We allowed new construction at 108 Center with no parking. Do we really not expect them to have any guests? Or do we expect their 70-year-old, 80-year-old relatives to bike to visit them? I guess what I'm saying is I think this really needs to be part of the comprehensive planning process, and there'll be winners and losers, but I think we really need to realize that there are many populations that are involved. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments at this time? Okay, don't see any hands. I'll just say from my own standpoint here, I a little concerned about endorsing a parking garage. I have managed parking garages in my career. They're incredibly expensive to operate and maintain. And what inevitably happens with them is that no money is set aside to maintain them or replace them. And so we would be sort of asking our kids to take on a $60 to $70 million replacement or refurbishment project. But I understand the need. I understand how important parking is to the merchants of Coolidge Corner, and trust me, as you know, Chris, and as you know, Michael, having served on this board, we hear from everybody. So I understand how important that particular aspect is. I just, I gotta do some hard thinking on this, because that O&M cost just sort of sticks out to me as something that we're going to be sort of living with or having to live with for a long time. But again, this is conceptual, and I appreciate the work. I appreciate the effort, and if you can get Aaron Shute to say it's the best public process she's ever seen, you're doing something right. So thank you very much, Chris. Michael, do you have any last words for us?
No, appreciate the opportunity to share this with the board, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
We will move on. Okay. Now we get to do Chestnut Hill. All right. How are we doing for
Thank
time?
you.
Wow, that took a long time. Meredith, I think you have Chestnut Hill.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Kane. Meredith Mooney, Economic Development Director. I lead the Economic Development and Long-Term Planning Division and have the privilege of working with Jessica DeRoy, who's on the Zoom. She's a Senior Economic Development Planner. I've also been fortunate over the past few years to be working very close with Mike Sandman, who, in addition to chairing the Center Street Lot Study Committee, has also been chairing the Community Advisory Group that we have been presenting updates to regarding the Chestnut Hill Commercial Area Study and receiving feedback and input from them. So and just before we dive into Chestnut Hill, I did just want to take the opportunity to acknowledge the incredible partnership that we have with the Engineering and Transportation Division. We meet biweekly with Dan Murphy, Dan Martin, Sam, and Dylan. And the past several years have been exciting times for the Economic Development Division. We were fortunate to receive ARPA funding to do several cool initiatives, a lot of which have overlap with transportation engineering. And it's been a pleasure to work on those collaborations. And even though we are coming towards the end of our ARPA funding and those projects are wrapping up, I think, we've talked about the Coolidge Corner parking study tonight. Center Street lot study work is continuing. We also had the Brookline Village, Washington Square projects. So we have a lot to continue working on with transportation engineering, and very grateful, as always, to our partners in DPW. So I just wanted to make sure that was acknowledged. I'm here tonight to present, do some quick table setting about the broader project context for the presentation that you're going to receive from our excellent consultant team, Kittleson, Juliet Walker, and Andy Butzik. And I'm going to be turning it over to them shortly, but Dan Martin did encourage me to include a quick slide deck that just gives you a sense of what we've been working on for the past couple of years. Pulling up my slides here. So the Chestnut Hill Commercial Area Study started a few years ago. People also refer to this as Chestnut Hill West. We've been talking about launching this assessment of kind of what opportunities exist for Chestnut Hill to kind of do and be more for the town, particularly in terms of contributing to the commercial tax base since the last comprehensive plan. So for 25 years or so, this has been on our to-do list, and we've been fortunate recently to be able to turn our attention towards it. So previously referred to as Chestnut Hill West, that's what I'm talking about with the Chestnut Hill Commercial Area Study. The primary objectives of this work are to incentivize significant net new commercial tax growth and to enhance the identity and livability of the Chestnut Hill commercial area. So this is a busy slide. This is an overview of the strategy, but I did just want to call your attention to this third section here about developing some infrastructure improvement concepts that will improve the pedestrian experience and make the area safer and easier to navigate around for all modes of transportation. We feel that that is a very important component in order to making the Chestnut Hill commercial area really thrive. This is an overview of the process that we have been working our way through since spring of 2024 when we launched the community outreach and engagement portion. We have since convened the community advisory group, which includes representatives from the local precincts and the neighborhood, as well as representatives from the advisory committee, economic development advisory board, planning board, to present regular project updates and receive feedback, as well as receive public comment. So on Monday, we'll be meeting again with the community advisory group. That will probably be our last meeting, and we'll have had a total of 19 meetings with that group. We have also separately been working with a subcommittee of our Economic Development Advisory Board that's been, development professionals who are active in the development industry who've been helping us develop the zoning and make sure that we're creating the right set of incentives to advance the study's objectives. So they've had about 9 meetings. We've been updating the select board regularly. We presented a couple of updates to the Housing Advisory Board, and our goal is to advance, finalize all of our recommendations, which will include some conceptual infrastructure improvements, but we're also looking to present a rezoning proposal for an overlay district to town meeting for spring. So we're working towards that late February town meeting warrant article filing deadline. This is an overview of all of the components that we've been working on within the study. You're going to hear about the transportation upgrades this evening. And then we are also working on finalizing the zoning, which is an overlay district. So we're not changing the base zoning, we're creating an overlay. And then the design guidelines that speak to the zoning and then also provide additional guidance in terms of best practices and aesthetics and the pedestrian experience in the area. This bottom section with the town protections, you might have read about in Brookline.News a redevelopment proposal in the Chestnut Hill Office Park. Just by total coincidence, as we were launching the Chestnut Hill study, the largest property within the study area, the Chestnut Hill Office Park, came under new ownership. So we've sort of been doing this parallel process of the commercial area study, developing zoning, while also considering a developer's redevelopment proposal. So we've been doing these in parallel and they've been informing one another. This is an overview of kind of where we're at in terms of finalizing the different recommendations and deliverables. So we're, working on closing things out ahead of the February deadline for town meeting. And then this is just, I will flip through these very quickly. This is the existing base zoning. You can see that there are some quirky aspects, even at first glance, of the existing zoning here. And we are proposing 4 sub-districts that have, sort of unique qualities and identities. 2 of the sub-districts in orange and this like salmon color here are going to require a minimum amount of commercial square footage in order to utilize the zoning overlay. So we're really emphasizing commercial growth here. We are refining this. These are not buildings. This is the zoning envelope. Just want everyone to take a breath. And we're working on refining some of these and presenting updates at the Monday Community Advisory Group meeting. But this just gives you a sense of sort of the zoning envelope that we're contemplating. These areas here are going to be coming down in terms of scale. And then I won't waste much time on the design guidelines. And then I'm going to now turn it over to the Kittleson team to talk about the transportation concepts that we have been developing.
All right, thanks, Meredith. Juliet Walker with Kittleson Associates, and I'm a principal planner. So we'll dive right in. Andy Butzick's going to also speak shortly. So I'll just give a quick overview and talk about our sort of set the stage, so to speak, as Meredith had mentioned before. Just a quick highlight of the study goals. So again, we're focused on the transportation aspect of this Chestnut Hill commercial area. There were goals, multimodal goals, looking at enhancing safety and access for all users, with a particular focus on vulnerable users such as pedestrians and bicyclists. Building awareness and coordinating with key partners. We know much of the transportation infrastructure in this area is not town owned, although there are town roads as well that we reviewed, but looking at coordinating and building some of those connections with MassDOT in particular, and then also the City of Newton, and then aligning the transportation vision with the proposed land use overall policies and objectives that Meredith introduced, and providing context for future redevelopment that had project-specific transportation focus. Okay, sorry. And the study is sort of loosely broken into 3 phases. This is probably more just to describe what we're doing in each in terms of scope, less about the distinct phases because they aren't really that distinct. We've been working with the town since last May, I think, was when we started working. We obviously the first phase was sort of setting the stage, existing conditions, gathering information already available on the study area. We did a few traffic counts as well, did some traffic speeds, assess safety performance. This was all what we were going to use to build off our recommendations, which we'll get into in a few moments. And then phase 2 was starting to identify some potential areas of focus, particularly for intersections, which is where a lot of the transportation improvements are focused, because that is where the confluence of all the modes. It is where you have a majority of safety concerns. It is also the way to help improve some of the traffic operational issues. So there's a number of reasons we focus on intersection treatments. And then also looking more holistically at the study area in terms of bicycle and pedestrian planning and completing gaps and planning ahead for future connections for bicycles and pedestrians. I mentioned the ongoing engagement and coordination with the other partners. And then where we are right now is sort of thinking about how the future network, future impact and future land use, how that will impact the capacity of the network in light of these potential intersection treatments and other improvements. All right, so just quickly on what we did for the existing conditions. As I mentioned, we looked at vehicular speeds. Our conclusion there is will probably be surprised to find out that speeding is occurring, and it is prevalent on particularly Hammond Pond Parkway and Woodland Road. We also looked at overall safety performance of the study area, and found that the majority of the crashes are occurring at 4 key intersections, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And that the cause and type of crashes that we were able to collect information about will inform some of the improvements that we're going to recommend. Here are the 4 key intersections. You'll note Hammond Pond Parkway and the Boylston ramps westbound, Hammond Park Parkway eastbound ramps as well, and then Boylston and Hammond Street, and then Hammond Pond Parkway and Heath Street. This is, again, just to inform our overall recommendations. The numbers aren't as significant for us in doing this evaluation. It's more about what is occurring, because it helps us understand what some of the safety concerns would be. We looked at traffic operations as well, measuring using different measures of effectiveness, volume to capacity ratios, and I can get into more specifics if you have questions about these overall levels of surface queues and delays for traffic. We did do counts, as I mentioned, but we also pulled from prior studies that had been done. The counts we did were in June. It was in collaboration with staff. We knew that this was a little bit of a tough time to do counts because some of the schools had already closed. So we did adjust to account for potential for undercounting, and we were able to adjust that. I think more specifically, on that note, again, this is just providing a baseline for making the recommendations. We know there are issues out there. The traffic volumes and the counts were just to sort of give us a starting point, but they aren't necessarily, you know, so significant that we're going to change our recommendations if we had done these counts in a different time of year. But we did want to make sure that we were reflecting as closely as possible what the traffic patterns were. Overall study intersections, and this is just one measure of effectiveness, but it gives sort of a broad understanding of our conclusions. Study intersections were found to generally operate at level of service D or better, but that indicates as people are probably not surprised that there are extensive delays at particular intersections during peak periods. We did have one intersection, Route 9 in Hammond, that was operating at a level of service F. And then we also evaluated bicycle and pedestrian comfort, looking at some of the impacts on pedestrians and bicycles feeling comfortable traveling along these roadways. High level of traffic stress in particular were noted for Boylston Street, Hammond Street, and Hammond Pond Parkway. That's due to a combination of speeds, lack of dedicated facilities, and this sort of desire paths for these particular modes. Heath Street, Tully, and Holly Lane tended to be, based on our assessment, more comfortable, though they were lacking some sidewalk connectivity and dedicated bicycle facilities, and that's just because they're in a little bit more of a residential environment and a little bit slower speeds. And then Woodland Road, also similar about lower stress for bicycles and pedestrians. I should say Heath Street and Tully Street, Holly Lane is probably more just their length and less about the residential nature. So that's just a broad brush of our overall existing conditions assessment. We can get into more details if people have questions, but now I'm going to turn over to Andy to talk about some of our multimodal capacity and safety improvement assessments.
Thanks, Juliet. And hi, I'm Andy Butzik. I'm a traffic engineer with Kittleson. So as Juliet mentioned, we're seeing some challenges for all modes of transportation in terms of both operations and safety. So the next phase of the project was really focused on how can we make and recommend improvements. So we're building off those phase one findings that we had, identifying potential intersections. At select intersections, we know we can't do all. We had 13 study intersections. We know we can't recommend complete overhauls for all 13. It's just not realistic within the town's budget to make, grandiose improvements across all 13. So we focused in on a few key ones that we found coming out of phase one. Also developed a future bicycle and ped network plan for the study area because we recognize that that is an important aspect to creating a complete network. It's as Juliet highlighted, there are some gaps in the network currently, but we'd like to help fill those in. And then another aspect of this is starting that coordination with MassDOT, DCR, and the City of Newton to make sure that any recommendations that we're making are jiving with what they're ultimately planning in their jurisdictions and on their streets as well. So to kind of start this off, we took the approach that Federal Highway Administration and MassDOT and several other states and commonwealths use. It's called the Intersection Control Evaluation, which takes a high-level view of intersection nodes in particular. So first focus on the intersections, then kind of talk about some of the segments and gaps in between at the intersections, but it takes a holistic look at different intersection alternatives. So thinking beyond just a conventional traffic signal or stop signs, what would be the most appropriate intersection control at a particular intersection? So this could be for new intersections, but in our case, in a developed urban-suburban environment, trying to retrofit some of the existing intersections. And the answer may be coming out of this that the existing control is the most appropriate, but this kind of forces you to take a step back and take a holistic look. So it begins with a high-level screening of various alternatives. It also, as you get a little bit further into the process, considers the potential safety impacts, operational impacts, and multimodal factors. And then it also incorporates some of the life cycle costs of the various alternatives. So you're not just thinking upfront, how much does it cost? What does that mean long-term in terms of maintenance and upgrades? So to kind of narrow down the list, like I said, we had 13 study intersections and want to focus in on a few key ones for the town to move forward with. We kind of narrowed those down based on some of the existing conditions where we were seeing operational concerns, some of the safety concerns that Julia alluded to, particularly at those 4 intersections where we're seeing high traffic volumes. We also took in some community and stakeholder feedback throughout the process. But probably most importantly, we want to make sure that we're supporting for that future growth. Meredith mentioned the rezoning and the redevelopment that's potentially coming to this area. So we want to make sure that any recommendations that we're coming up with are helping to coordinate with that development and then helping it fit seamlessly into this community. So the three intersections circled in blue, the primary intersections, are Route 9 and Hammond Street and Heath Street, and then Hammond Pond Parkway and Heath Street on the western side of our study area. And those are primarily driven by the factors mentioned on the previous slide. We had, found operational concerns at these intersections, as well as some safety concerns, particularly angle crashes, high severity angle crashes at all of these. We also have some secondary intersections along Route 9 because we recognize this is a network and all of these intersections interplay with each other. So any changes that we make at the primary intersections are likely going to affect operations and safety at the secondary intersections. So we're also including those in our evaluation. So what we have here at the three primary intersections, the list down the left side is the intersection treatments that are identified in the intersection control evaluation strategy. So you'll see 12 at-grade intersection forms, and you may not be familiar with all of them, and I can go over any of them that you want to have any questions about. But these are all just alternative control forms. So we have the conventional signal, which are out there today at each of these three intersections. We also evaluated an alternative for that signal, so something more like a minor change, whether that's to signal timing, signal phasing, lane configurations, and then a whole host of other things like roundabouts, restricted crossing U-turns, Eaton U-turns, that I'm happy to get to in just a second. But this slide is just showing what we considered up front. At the initial stage, the intent is to take a broad look. We did rule out a few just because they were not feasible just from a gut check. For example, Route 9 and Hammond Street, a single lane roundabout. It's a 2-lane divided roadway today. You're not going to drop a single lane roundabout onto Route 9. Just not going to work. There are certainly some constraints with each of the ones that we do have checks here for, like an R-cut or a bow tie. There are going to be constraints that we'll get into in a little bit, but at this initial stage, wanted to include them in the initial intersection control evaluation that we did. So we'll get into each intersection in just a second.
So sorry, Andy, are you're gonna take each of those one by one? Because we're really getting stretched for time here.
So we're cutting a lot of those out in terms of how we ruled them out. I'll talk through that, but we have two intersection forms for each of the three primary.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, so I'll try and be quick.
No, I'm just trying to think so we're being asked to accept this as a planning document. I'm not sure how we would oppose it, but you've clearly done a lot of work, and I appreciate that. I'm just watching the clock here.
All right, Meredith, I guess we'd defer to you. How far do you want us to go on the detail?
I mean, I guess if we could provide a quick overview of sort of the options for definitely Route 9, Hammond Street, and then Hammond and Heath, and then if time allows, Hammond Pond Parkway. But I think we just wanted to provide the T-board with an adequate overview of kind of what's the realm of possibility that we've honed in on based on this conceptual planning work. But Chair Kane, in terms of time, I do want to be respectful of your time.
And I don't think we need that level of detail at this point, because if those changes take place, it's going to come back to us in the future. I mean, I want to defer to my colleagues here and make sure I'm not bulldozing over this if anybody really wants to hear it. I just we have a couple of other lengthy agenda items that we need to get to. So I would appreciate it if you could maybe stay at a 50,000-foot level, and we don't have to get into the detail of every intersection just now, safe in the knowledge that these will all come back if they ever get implemented.
Okay, that's fine. We can just sort of scan through. So this probably is one that merits a little bit of explanation. Andy, do you want to just quickly explain this one? This is one we're taking a little bit further in terms of review. Oh, one of the members has their hand raised. I don't know if you want to take that.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to ask in this, whether it's possible in some way to focus on pedestrian safety implications, because I read through this and And there is a lot in here, and I agree, like, we probably don't need to go through all of it, but I mean, this is we've had some deaths in this area recently, right? So this is not like an area to treat lightly in terms of pedestrian safety. So I just want to ask that any of the things that you're talking about or you're showing us, that you can sort of emphasize how you're thinking about pedestrians with it.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the arc cut in particular in that? I think this slide and this slide will be helpful, right, Andy, in terms of understanding why an arc cut, what some of the benefits are in that regard.
Sure, absolutely. And maybe I'll just do a quick 5-second overview of an arc cut just in case anyone's not familiar. I'll try and be as quick as possible. So we previous slide just showed a kind of low cost solution. This is kind of the more robust solution that could probably accommodate more capacity changes in growth in this area. But what this option does is it redirects minor street traffic. So there's no direct left turns or through movements from Hammond Street onto Route 9. They're redirected to make a right turn and then travel downstream, make a U-turn at a new signalized location, and then come back and then complete their movement, whether it would be a through or a right, to make their initial left or right turn. If you want to go to the next slide, Juliet, and the real safety benefit from this is the reduction of conflict points. On the left, you have the conventional signal that's out there today, where you have 32 conflict points. Most worrisome is the white dots in the middle, where they're angle crashes and head-on crashes that are higher severity. So from a vehicular standpoint, we're reducing it from 32 conflict points to 18, and 18 which are lower severity based on the angle that they intersect at. But to your point, Wendy, it is also anticipated to be safer for bicycles and pedestrians. If you want to go to the next slide, Juliet, we can focus on the bottom half here, where we're talking about the pedestrian bicycle impacts. As I alluded to, reducing the number of conflict points, obviously the number of conflict points for a pedestrian or bicyclist crossing in the crosswalk is reduced. So fewer directions that they have to have their head on a swivel as they're crossing, and potential impacts there. But it also helps reduce the crossing distance, because we're introducing median islands for these pedestrians and bicyclists to cross Route 9. And it doesn't preclude things like adding a leading pedestrian interval to allow pedestrians a few seconds to start crossing the intersection prior to the vehicular signal going green, to better establish themselves so they can be seen by the vehicle. Whereas if they go at the same time, might not necessarily see them in enough time. It also allows us to kind of bump out the curbs along Route 9 to, again, shorten that pedestrian crossing distance. So from those aspects, anticipating that something like an arc cut would be help improve safety for all modes at this intersection.
And then maybe we can just scan through the next few locations. We did provide sort of this overview of the anticipated benefits. I don't think we're doing anything significantly innovative in terms of something unusual for Hammond and Street and Heath. It's more just thinking about signal improvements there. And then Hammond Pond and Heath, we did look at the potential for a roundabout. And Andy, I don't know if you want to touch on any of the benefits there as opposed to signal improvements. I think one of the issues for that is obviously the impact on abutting properties.
Yeah, I can very briefly. I know Richard had your hand up, so happy to take a question. But again, similar to the arc cut, one of the main safety benefits of a roundabout is significantly reducing the number of conflict points and the severity of those potential conflict points, reducing from 32 at the intersection today to 8, and 8 where for vehicles, they're potentially intersecting at a much less severe angle rather than a head-on or a T-bone, kind of a side swipe as you're entering the roundabout. So much less severity in terms of crashes anticipated for a roundabout.
Richard, go ahead.
Ryan, so I've gone through the deck also, and I'm just trying to understand, are we, with this project, we're going to be asking the state to redesign Route 9, DCR, possibly to redesign Hammond Pond Parkway, or is it just a concept idea of addressing potential traffic conflicts? I'm just trying to understand where this is going.
So I can start, Richard, just giving a little context. One of the reasons that we are doing the intersection control evaluation approach is that that is the process that MassDOT would typically take for a project to identify intersection improvements. So it is considering that this would be done in partnership with MassDOT, that these improvements would be done in partnership with MassDOT, which is why we're engaging in conversation with them as well.
Okay. And the one area there that I'm mostly concerned with is Heath Street, making sure that we protect that back neighborhood along Woodland Road and everything, and the impact there on Brookline residents there. So I'll let you go forward. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that question.
Jonathan, why don't you go ahead as well?
Are we in question time now?
No, specifically to this one, but not in general yet.
No, that'll hold.
Okay.
All right,
Juliet,
I can move along. I think unless people have questions about the other intersections, we can go back to, I know you guys are tight on time, so we'll just talk again about the high level about the bicycle and pedestrian network improvements. And I'll just skip ahead to the actual improvements recommendations. So this is concept level, but it is in response both to the observations in terms of comfort and safety, the data we collected, as well as some of the prior input you've all received as a community related to improvements. And so you'll see some of the key improvements being recommended are a shared use path to facilitate connections between the Hammond Pond Parkway and Hammond Street along Heath Street. So looking at a separated facility there, and traffic calming. And then, I'm sorry, I'm speaking a little bit too fast. So traffic calming along Heath Street, and then looking at opportunities for shared use path connections on the commercial areas along Heath Street, as well as connections across those properties via shared use path, facilitating better connections between these areas. Along Boylston Street, the best treatment there would be a separated facility, both to facilitate bicycle travel as well as to make sure that pedestrians also feel particularly protected and buffered from traffic. We know that right-of-way constraints are going to be an ongoing concern, so there was also discussion about potentially utilizing a connection across private property, and we did talk to the City of Newton about this potential. Then the other recommendations for bicycles in particular are just looking at some of the connecting where the improvements have already occurred. So for example, on Hammond Pond Parkway, making that connection to the existing bicycle facilities, as well as the future construction of the road diet along Hammond Street, and making sure that's carried through to the T station up here. So that's just a very broad brush. I know I probably skipped some key things, but I'm just going to move on to the pedestrian network, which also reflects some similar improvements. Again, focus more at the pedestrian scale, focusing on making the streetscape in particular on Boylston a little bit more comfortable for pedestrians, identifying some opportunities for crossing improvements. And I think that kind of covers it. So happy to take some questions.
Hey, Jonathan, why don't you come in here?
So the work on the improvements on Route 9 and the improvements on Hammond Pond Parkway. Is that expecting like a similar kind of paid for by the developments as they go in kind of setup? Is that how this is going to play out? Similar to say like the Chestnut Hill Square?
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I don't know if Meredith wants to hop in, but I mean, the idea is you have
you don't have to. It's really more a question for Meredith.
Okay.
Yeah, great question, Jonathan. So I think obviously there's a lot of moving parts in working with Mass DOT, but we are anticipating significant redevelopment along Route 9, and we'll have mitigation payments as part of that. So I think we want to be prepared, and in anticipating negotiations with developers, to have an understanding of like the scope of needs in terms of infrastructure improvements so we can appropriately calibrate the mitigation required.
Great, thanks.
Len, go ahead.
For the bicycle network map, are those changes consistent with Brookline's Green Routes Bicycle Network Plan? The Bicycle Advisory Committee has spent a lot of time putting together that document, and I hope that's used at least as a reference.
Yes, I believe we've been consistent with that, and we'll double check, but yeah, we certainly weren't trying to contradict any of the recommendations that have already, the good work that's already been done.
Okay, and then also for the proposed roundabout, how many lanes are going to go into the roundabout? I think our biggest roundabout in Brookline, Horace James Circle, that's the #1 location for car crashes in Brookline. And if we make another one of those, we're going to be very unpopular. So, and I think I've read that with the more lanes you have in a roundabout, the more dangerous it becomes. Something also related to radius that makes it more dangerous. So anything that we can do to make this roundabout safer would be much appreciated.
Yeah,
Okay,
if this were to be advanced, we were looking at a single lane roundabout, so Hammond Pond Parkway would drop to a single lane on the approaches, so it'd only be a single circulating lane.
Okay, thank you.
Multi-lane can be sometimes confusing.
Wendy, go ahead, please.
Well, just on the roundabout, I hope very strongly that that option is not really considered. That I don't really understand how that's good for pedestrians. I've never met a roundabout that's easy to walk across, but I'm told they exist, but not in Brookline. So in terms of the Route 9 crossings, is the only potential change there? So we're talking about like new development, more people living here, more commercial space across the street, across the highway from a very, very active, popular commercial area. So is the only change here to cross between those two changing the blinking light to now be a stoplight?
There's a recommended consideration for a new crossing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at overall improvements at the existing beacon, I think is actually here because it's accessible. It's already there, but it needs some improvements. So that crossing already exists. This one would be proposed to be a new one, and then it would be general improvements to the existing locations. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Well, what would be the lighting situation at the new one?
This one, because it's a mid-block, you could, but it's also multi-lane. I think, Andy, we'd probably look at some sort of hawk or even a signal, right?
Yeah, it would be a hawk. So it'd be signalized when a pedestrian hits the button, it stops vehicular traffic.
And that's the suggested change to the existing one as well?
Yes. Yep.
This would improve that one to upgrade it to that. Exactly.
Right. Thanks.
Richard.
Quick question on the pedestrian. Has there been any discussion with a pedestrian overpass to connect to the street?
That has not come up.
The busyness of Route 9, I think it should be considered if it could be added to the conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So I think the important context here for us is to know that this is, again, conceptual, early days. It's a planning document, it's a reference document, it's not moving infrastructure. So we will, if and when these get implemented, we'll have many more chances to review and weigh in on specific projects, perhaps with a little more specific detail. So I'm comfortable at this point in voting to approve this, at least for, yeah, Janice, I see you, we're not done yet. At least for, as a planning document, safe in the knowledge that there will be a lot more process to go. And with that, if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function, and I would be delighted to call upon you and hear what you have to say, especially you, Janice Kahn.
Thank you very much, Brian Kane. So Janice Kahn, town meeting member, precinct 15, and I am often at the Hammond Pond Parkway, Heath Street intersection, which does have an enormous number of problems. One problem that has not been mentioned, which I would like the Transportation Board to be aware of, is that when cars turn right, if they're heading east on Heath Street and turn right onto Hammond Pond Parkway, they are going over the curb, and it's really endangering pedestrians. And so when we think about intersections, we should also think about ways of encouraging cars to stay in the car lanes and not go over the sidewalks. They've made these handicapped ADA access points so low now compared to the surrounding curb that cars are just not, they're going right over that, and we're having a real problem in my neighborhood. The other thing I want to mention is that Hammond Pond Parkway is slated in the Brookline side is a phase 2 of what was just completed on the Newton side, which came out wonderful. But it would mean the roundabout, it would mean that there would be 2 roundabouts in very close proximity to each other. And when they decide to cut down the number of lanes on Hammond Pond Parkway, already the traffic backs up from the Horace James Circle roundabout quite far down towards Heath Street already. And when it goes to 1 lane, it's going to absolutely fill that area. And so I'm very concerned that it's then going to have a spillover effect into Newton, which has already reduced the lanes. So something to think about in the planning. The other thing about the R-cut, I believe that it's a really failed idea for this particular intersection, because Station 6, which is an important fire station in our area, is on Hammond Street. And if there is a need for them to get to Brookline residents on the other side of Route 9, we don't really want them to have to turn right towards Boston, take a U-turn to get back to Hammond Street. We're going to want that safety, all of our public safety vehicles to have access to the residences across Hammond Pond Parkway. So, I mean, or across Route 9 on Hammond Street. So just something to think about, in the broader way, the way this area actually functions, that that's our only fire station in, south of Route 9 in Chestnut Hill and South Brookline. So it's we need to make sure that we don't impede their ability to perform their public safety tests. So thank you. And thank you for your good questions, Transportation Board, and also for, I know, the hard work that that has been done on looking at this area, which is complex and has lots of challenges. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Janice. Any other members of the public wish to make comments at this time? Seeing none, I will turn it back to the board. I think staff is requesting a vote on this. Is there a vote language? Let's see here now. Chestnut Hill area. What do we got here? Okay. Nope. Is there a vote language anywhere? Does anyone see vote language? If not, is there a motion to accept the, now I just lost my agenda.
Concept planning.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Is there a motion to accept the Chestnut Hill area commercial transportation related study as a planning document by the Transportation Board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Who wants to call the roll?
I would like to. Jonathan,
Yes.
Richard,
Right, yes.
Len,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to 5C, presentation and discussion of the DPW Engineering and Transportation Division's Capital Improvement Plan. Commissioner, I believe you wanted to introduce this.
So I do, and actually, I think first thing, so thank you to members of the Transportation Board, town staff, members of the public for being here tonight. What we're going to do is we're actually going to present 5C, 5D, and 5E together. There are no actions being asked of from the board, no votes. What we're really doing is just introducing a conversation that we want to have around the projects that we have, community engagement, and how we together prioritize work in the future. So specifically, we are going to give you a clear picture of the transportation work currently underway across town. Kind of know what our baseline is. We're going to introduce a draft of community engagement guidelines and a project prioritization framework that will help the board and the department and the public work together more effectively. And we want to start a shared conversation around what comes next. So which projects rise to the top, what level of effort do they require, and what's realistically achievable given our staffing and resources, which also includes funding. So at its core, this is really about clarity, predictability, and partnership. And we're just trying to create a framework that allows us to solve hard transportation problems together with transparency, intention, and respect for everyone's time and energy. Okay, Sam, next slide. So big picture before we dive into projects and processes. I think I went through this, so we'll go one more. The Transportation Brookline is not one program or project. It's large, it's an interconnected system. Roads, sidewalks, signals, curb ramps, lighting, parking, transit access, bike infrastructure that must function safely every day for tens of thousands of people. And our role in the Department of Public Works is to manage the system as a long-term civic asset, while also responding to evolving community needs around safety, accessibility, climate, and mobility. Every decision affects how people move through their neighborhoods, get to school, access transit, and feel safe in public spaces. So our team, and we can go to the next one. So the purpose of the transportation staff is to deliver safe, accessible, and inclusive mobility for all users, balance competing demands, the public right of way, support our adopted policies like Vision Zero, Complete Streets, traffic calming, and then provide professional analysis and implementation support to boards and commissions. And then with the board, in addition to your responsibilities per statute, is setting policy direction with us, guiding project prioritization, providing design oversight for major projects, which we have a lot in the queue right now, and ensuring meaningful and appropriate public engagement. So the partnership between the board and staff is essential, and the intent to sort of introduce this framework is to really strengthen that partnership going forward. So what we're going to do is Dan Murphy, the Director of Engineering and Transportation, is going to present our current projects. And these are going to be sort of the big picture projects. And then Sam Downs, our Deputy Director, will present then the proposed public engagement framework. And the reason why we're doing that is we've learned some lessons over time. Engagement sometimes happens too late. Roles and expectations aren't always clear. Maintenance projects have been delayed by process confusion. And then staff and board are sometimes stretched thin trying to respond to everything at once. And this can result in frustration for residents, board members, and staff. So we're proposing a reset. It's not less engagement, it's really better, earlier, and more predictable engagement that will be scaled to the size and impact of each project. And the other thing to mention as well in terms of really the incredible staff that we have is they are small but mighty. We have, an associate director position that's currently vacant. We're looking to fill a sustainable transportation engineer and a transportation engineer. And then 2 administrative support staff that help with all the parking permits. And about 50% of their time is dealing with issues as they come in, addressing that full network every day. So we need to be mindful that in addition to the capital projects, they're also solving problems and working with the police, highway, multiple teams every day, and responding to citizen requests. So with that, Dan Murphy will review the current projects.
Okay, thank you. I know, thank you, Commissioner Shute. I know you folks will know some of these, most of these projects, and I also want to say we do get help from the engineering staff. I mean, Bill Smith is a great resource on transportation, but I'll just jump right in. If you go to the next one. Yeah, Washington Street, as you all are very well aware of, we're working through that. You can see we've made our 25% submittal. We're looking for the design public hearing in May or June. We're wayfinding, we're going to have a survey out soon. We're looking to introduce placemaking to the Small Business Development Committee in February. Again, this leverages a lot of state funding, and we'll obviously provide continuous updates. Beacon Street Bridle Path, Nancy, thank you for your push. I went and looked a little bit into the last agenda, and the road safety audit is the big thing we're working on. This survey that's getting finished up. We're working on coordinating with the tree warden for the tree inventory. And again, we are going to be starting the public meetings once we get through the road safety audit. We did have the 3 public meetings along the corridor, but that project is hugely important, and we're really spending a lot of time trying to just finish up and get these station designs approved and moved along. So that's really where we are on Bridle Street, Beacon Street Bridle. School Street lighting, we've got a component to do some lighting, working with the school project. They're doing a lot of the underground stuff, and we're doing the light fixtures and getting the design and that piece of construction done. That's an important project and coming fast. Davis Path Footbridge, we've got the 25% design submittal was made in July. It's not currently TIP program, but there's some discussion. We're coming up with our annual TIP review, and maybe there's some movement on that to get it into the program. I guess that's enough of that. The Vision Zero Action Plan, we got last year we got funded in the SIP, I think 500,000. So a lot of that is going towards RRFBs. We get another grant from the state for equipment, and we're using some of the money to do the installations. We're also looking at high priority network intersections for safety. We're looking at a lot of daylighting at crosswalks and high crash intersections identified in the plan. Next, traffic calming. We have our first project that's been bid and ready to go in the spring. It's at Tappan, Beaconsfield, Buckminster, Clark, and Clifton, and we're working on a concept for second plan. We think these could be ones that are easier to go through community outreach, not as high level, and but we're excited about that plan coming. Next, on the bicycle access improvements, again, we use this to support local grant matches for blue bikes. Bike-related improvements on our road projects, so like on our just our regular projects for Bond and Waring course, and we did Beacon Street. We use the money from bike access improvements for some of the bike improvements, so particularly the paint. So that's useful to help on those. We add parking in commercial areas, and we obviously address your priorities. So, and the other thing we will be using, we have some excess, some money in in the bank right now, but we'll also use that. Once we get our priorities, we can use some of the bike access money to fund those projects. Parking meter replacement. As you know, we've got a 10% replacement plan. We're working on that. We're also looking, I think last meeting, we talked about maybe pilot for some of the passport parking by plate at the stations, and but we're moving forward with that. And we did go through the pilot study, completed, and we've selected IPS as the preferred vendor. This is a newer one. I don't know if you've seen this yet. This is really, we just took a look at the parking lots all around town, and 21 of them, 9 football fields worth. So we're trying to think about, you know, how to sequentially do that on more of an annual basis. Intersection signals, we've got 67 total signals. We've identified 13 priorities. We're trying to get to the point where we can get one a year done. Obviously, there's a huge need for it. We've got priority signals identified here. You can see Kent Street at Aspinwall, Longwood at Kent, and Montfort at Carlton and Lenox Street. So this is a very important piece. We could look at some of the Vision Zero money to try and help fund that, but these are expensive retrofits, so we need supplement. We need to use different money or find supplemental money to get that done. I just do a quick thing. I just want to take some credit. We've been working hard. We do have a lot of complete street projects that we've done. Dan Martin has been great. And Sam, everybody. Beacon Street at Strathmore, 2 sets of RFBs. We did the bike markers on Beacon, new crosswalks and ramp improvements. Buckminster, Fisher and Dean. We've done. We just rolled out. We've done a bit this year. We're trying to do the trip hazards on sidewalks using a kind of cutting, where they just kind of trim the walks, and it's been very effective and cost effective. And we're using that to good effect. I think we've done miles of that. Sam
13 miles.
13 miles of it. So it's been great. Wow. And it's a good thing. We did it up on Center Street. We get beautiful feedback from a lot of people that were really happy about it. So we're looking all over. We're going to be doing Beacon Street and other locations all around. So that's really pleased about that. We put out the 62 motors give 4 feet to bikes signs out. We got the 20-mile-an-hour signs you may have all seen rolled out. So we're excited about that. The Kennard Street Safe Routes to School pilot approvals moving along, and then obviously the 25% design bill. So we are making progress, but we're looking forward to coming up with the priorities with you and working through that. So the next one. So I just wanted to point out, I know we've talked about this some with the policies we did in 2024, just the kind of the 2 tracks. We've got the pavement maintenance and preservation program to kind of move our maintenance along, but then we've got the separate track with the complete streets and multimodal projects, and working in coordination with you to help identify the ones that we want to pull to do more substantial work. And I will say, even on the PMPP, we are doing some improvements where we can. We try to get all the sidewalk and ramps done a year ahead on our PMPP projects, and we'll do bike upgrades where we can, where they don't cause effect or there's no parking impacts, but we will try to get some space and make those improvements on those projects as well. Let's see. Okay, that's it for that. Pavement. So this is just tells you the kind of defines it. We're looking at the PCI of all the roads and using cost benefit value analysis to improve the overall pavement condition of the town's roadway network, considering the best financial return to the town. The approach balances roadway usage, PCI, pavement condition, treatment type, and cost with the goal of advancing the roads over time to a state of good repair. And we also include crack sealing and patching. As part of that, we're really trying to stretch the dollars as much as we can to get the pavement condition up and for everybody. I've just shown we do a 5-year. We have a 5-year draft that we did based on the PCIs that we got a few years ago. We've done another round of that. We're going to be updating these. But the next 2 years, these are the streets that came up on our list as the ones that we should be looking at for the next 2 years. And you'll see Harvard and Hammond are on there, and High Street, the top 3 for this year. And the next year, you see Brookline, Cypress, Longwood, Chestnut Hill Ave. It came up on the list, although we started looking at it last year. It was still, that's a legacy one a little bit. And then Dwight and John. So we worked from that. We will modify it. We have a draft for the next 2 years after that, but we're waiting to get our a new pavement condition index to modify that. We'll do that as we go. Let's see. This is just taking a little bit of credit. We did in 2025. We did almost 4 miles of road. So we're really working hard. Jake and Sam and everybody's been great trying to move this along and get some work done. I hope you've seen it out there in the field. This might be the last one. Yeah, the last one I've got is on the sidewalks. Again, we got 149 miles of them. We did an inventory in 2020. We have a lot more to do, but we're making good progress. I think we did 7,500 linear feet last year. We did 56 curb ramps. We do have the backlog. And again, I talked about the contractor with the trip hazards, which has been great. And yeah, Sam said we did 7 miles. So this is great.
It is
for us.
13, but I mistakenly put 7. So my apologies.
I'm glad it's 13. And then lastly, I'm ready to turn it over to Sam. I just want to say I'm excited about this new process that we're looking at. There's been a ton of work. I share Commissioner's excitement about it. And I really look forward to working with the Transportation Board to really come up with the way to move all these projects through and prioritize things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sam to go through it.
Thank you, Dan. As the commissioner said earlier, Sam Downs, very familiar face. It's good to see all of you. I am the Deputy Director of Engineering, and hence the minor hiatus away from this amazing group. But I'm really excited to be back in talking about a project that our team is really excited about. And we've gotten a lot of really great input to date to talk about how, as the commissioner said, we can create a really clear framework for how we manage our projects moving forward. And what's great about this is that we are able to create a scale from the projects that are going to require the most in-depth public engagement all the way down to the maintenance aspects of our work that would not require engagement when we're just focusing on repaving roads, reconstructing sidewalks, as we manage our assets for the town. So as I said, we're gonna talk about a few tiers here today, and I hope that you can follow along. There is going to be a more detailed document. And this is an overview of that document in draft format. So as I mentioned, there are 4 tiers that projects are broken into, with tier 1 being the most heavily involved, greatest public process when it comes to evaluating and balancing the needs of the community in commercial and residential areas. And that goes down to tier 4, which is our maintenance work. When we talk about Craftsland to Arlington, the roads that we resurfaced last year, putting it back as it was. So as the commissioner mentioned earlier, these tiers reflect the scope and complexity and the level of depth when it comes to community impact. And this is really going to help all of us work more cohesively together to be transparent, deliver projects on time, and build consensus and trust with the community who these projects are impacting. So a key component of this new policy and framework is select board oversight. So as many of you who are familiar as either town meeting members, former town meeting members, friends of town meeting members, all transportation mobility projects do advance through the town's CIP and are reviewed by the town administrator, select board, and town meeting to ensure that they're aligning with the community priorities. Of course, Commissioner Shute has the discretion to adjust the scope and timing of any of these projects as she sees fit. But this framework is going to be a really great tool for us to improve efficiency and also execute the projects in a way that the public engagement can be scaled according to the impact. So here is a high-level overview of what will be provided in a more depth manner. So tier 1, as I mentioned, these are the greatest impact projects. This is the Washington Street. This is the Bridle Path of our menu of projects. This requires TDRC, Transportation Design Review Committee, This includes transportation liaisons, possible select board liaisons, representatives from all commissions and disability commission, bicycle advisory committee, a lot of support from our boards and commissions, as well as involving, residents and commercial business owners. So this timeline is about 2 to 3 years prior to construction. And the decision for the ultimate design of that project will be made by both the transportation board and the select board. We move down to tier 2. Of course, I'll take questions at the end. I just want to get through this so we can review it. Again, we're talking about major cross-section changes, but specific to residential neighborhoods, excluding commercial areas. This still will be formed through a transportation design review committee. The size of that committee may be slightly smaller, but we'll leave it to the purview of the chair. And this process will start approximately 1 to 2 years prior to construction. Third is a moderate level of engagement, our tier 3 projects. These projects might include things such as traffic calming. When we did the speed hump project last year, that would be a good example of a tier 3 project. And this would include, this would occur about roughly 6 to 12 months prior to construction, and also would seek approval from the transportation board. And lastly, as I mentioned, is the maintenance oriented work. That is the resurfacing as part of our PMPP. When we are putting back exactly what was there before with no parking impacts, no major cross-section changes. This will include noticing the abutters of the construction schedule so they can understand what the impacts will be to them. This is a little bit more in depth, so thank you for hanging tight with me. I'll again try to move through this quickly, but tier 1 and tier 2 projects are the biggest, or our largest scales, and the Washington Street, the Bridle Path. And this will involve members of this board acting as the liaisons, as Len has for the Center Street Lot Study, Nancy has for the Bridle Path. Len, I think you're also on the Bridle Path. Sorry if I misremembered, but it requires this commitment from you all to help lead the design in addition to other boards and committee members. This involves multiple public meetings, select board approval, and as I mentioned, Washington Street, Bridle Path, Davis Footbridge are examples of tier 1 projects. A tier 2 project that focuses on a residential corridor is a Chestnut Hill Ave. It's a Hammond Street, School Street, potential future projects, Lee and Clyde, along those lines. Next, we have tiers 3 and 4 as we move down the chain of depth when it comes to public engagement. We will still have targeted neighborhood engagement for those tier 3, those traffic calming projects, potential additions of bike lanes, whatever it is, that neighborhood engagement will still occur. But we would not necessarily form a transportation design review committee to oversee the engagement process. But this board would be still extremely involved, and ultimately the vote would still be in your hands. Tier 4, again, notification based. We're talking about maintenance oriented projects. We have, safety improvements on Clinton Road that turned out really well. A curb extension, but in addition, all the traffic calming that was implemented on these roads, and then the maintenance oriented projects at the end. So just in summary, this framework that our team, in collaboration with a number of really important players, including Chairman Kane, thank you, Brian. This framework aligns with Vision Zero, traffic calming and complete streets policies, all of which have either been adopted or renewed in the last 12 to 18 months. And so this key alignment is going to really help ensure that we are delivering, again, like I said, transparent and consistent approaches to public engagement, which hasn't necessarily been true because we haven't had this framework. And now that we have it, it will support safe, accessible, and sustainable mobility outcomes, and better clarify the role that the board plays in that. So I'm happy to hold off on questions. I'm going to hand it back to the commissioner.
Thank you, Sam. I think maybe just we don't have that many more slides. So I think sort of wrapping it up and then taking questions after that would be great.
Perfect.
And thank you very much. And in terms of the framework, it's intended to be very flexible because some projects like Washington Street are going to require more time, more complexity. We're going through the TIP, which require, it has its own, Mass DOT has its own set of requirements. So within each of those, we'll be able to really sort of set up that process together. So it is very much intended to be flexible, and we will be there every step of the way with you through that engagement. But alongside engagement, we want to formalize how projects are prioritized. We're very proud of what the team has accomplished, and I think you heard that from Dan. But we also want to be realistic about the volume of projects that we can manage for the team. We have a finite number of engineers, planners, inspectors, etc. So realistically, in any given year at this point, we feel like we can probably support one new major corridor project in construction, one major corridor project in design, and that would be a tier 1 or tier 2 process. And then it could be 1 or 2 active community outreach that would then lead to some form of design and construction that could be a tier 3. That's where we're talking about maybe different pedestrian improvements, different traffic calming, some of which may be really straightforward, not take a lot of time because of a lot of consensus around what it is. Others will take a little bit more. We also have a current backlog of projects that the town would like to see move forward, and we just need to figure out where those fit in the overall sequence. So next slide, please. So, as we sort of wrap up the presentation for tonight, this final section, we're looking at priority corridors. So we're just sort of introducing these priority corridors. They've been identified through various adopted plans, Vision Zero, Complete Streets, Green Routes policies. And this is really going to be where the Transportation Board's leadership is essential. The ones highlighted in green were already working on and are already underway. But really the question before us is, not only which project is next, but as we think about this framework, what level of effort does it require? What tier of engagement is appropriate? And what does success look like as we're thinking about what those projects are? Next slide, please. So to sort of put this together, we talked about first the projects that we currently have underway. So on the left here, you see the list of current projects: Washington Street, Bridle Path, Davis Path, Hammond Street, Road Diet and new intersection, the School Street lighting, in coordination with the building department, the B branch accessibility upgrades, which you're going to be hearing a lot about in the next few months. Parking meter upgrades, street sign replacement, Blue Bikes expansion, which we're going to be going gangbusters with, the two-way bike planning and traffic signal inventory. This is possible analysis through a state grant that the town's considering, and installing that last phase of APS. And what we want to do is put forward for you to think about and you to come up with some of your own ideas. What are some scenarios for what the next priority projects will look like? And so that might mean something like, and these are just examples for you to start thinking about, but a scenario could be, and this first one, okay, traffic calming, bid package, and construction. So every year we want to make sure that we're advancing our traffic calming, kind of those projects. We're working with the neighborhood. We have 31 traffic calming requests. Let's prioritize those. We're going to design, a group of them each year, and we're going to implement a group each year. So to keep that moving, that's one, and that's probably a level 3, engagement level. Chestnut Hill Avenue, we've commenced that process. What does the transportation board want to do in terms of making a decision on how we move forward? And then Lee and Clyde Road Diet is something that the board has discussed quite a bit and is part of the concept of how over time we want to make biking access to South Brookline. So that could be one approach. Another could be traffic calming, but looking at Brookline Avenue and Carlton Street as sort of that next bucket of projects. Or if we look at the next one, it could be Netherlands Road and Independence Drive. So these are just scenarios for us to talk about as a group. Staff will have recommendations as to some that may be a little bit more where they've already done some analysis, they have background information, and they're ready to kick off a public process with the transportation board and the public. But we also want you to have some time to think about both the project, what we have going on, and where you see the priorities going forward. And I think another way to think about this is the traffic calming, something that might be along the lines of complete street, multimodal, and then maybe thinking about intersections and pedestrian safety. So there could be a way for us to split that up each year so that we're tackling all of those categories each year. And so I think with that, I think the final slide is maybe just what we're hoping for in the future. So this, we want to put a conversation around this on a future meeting where we can ultimately, hopefully, get your feedback on the on prioritization and also formalize the guidelines so that if you have comments, please use track changes, send them in to Dan Murphy and he'll incorporate that, send that back out to you. We want to ultimately identify those top priorities, assign a tier to the ones that you identify as the priority, and then who the transportation board members and also potentially subcommittee or advisory committee members might be that would help support the public engagement process. So I know this is a lot. A lot of this actually came out of the Complete Streets policy that was approved and updated in 24 around the prioritization. So we've really put some thought into how we could make it meaningful both for you and staff and also the public. So thank you.
You sure that's it? Nothing
That's
else? No, you sure? Nothing else. Okay.
I'm sure there will be.
No, thank you very much. And you and I have talked about this, Commissioner, and I think what I like about this is that we're trying to systematize the approaches we're taking, and instead of putting out fires everywhere all the time, we're trying to start approaching stuff a little more in a regimented way. And I think that's important. I mean, the thing that sticks out to me is the 31 traffic calming requests from neighborhoods. And I'm pretty sure that number's been about 30 since I was first on this board 15 years ago. It's one of those things that we say is a priority, but we just never seem to be able to get to them because something else always pops up. And so approaching it this way, or a way like this, I guess I should say, will allow us to put ring fences around things and say, no, this is a priority. We're going to do this right now. And the staff is amazing and does great work, and there's fewer and fewer of them all the time. And they all have other things to do besides transportation board things. So I think it's important that we, especially with the overrides that are looming and things like that, that we tell folks what our priorities are, that we match the resources we have to the projects we choose, and that we're very aware and respectful of staff's limited time to do all the things we ask them to do. And that's why I think this approach is the right one, and it's something that I support. We're going to have to do a lot more work. We're going to have to do a lot of prioritization. We're going to have to do a lot of discussion, and this board is going to go back and forth a lot on what should be a 2 and what should be a 3 and what should be above this and below that. But I think for now, as an approach, this is a first step at getting our arms holistically around everything that the Transportation Division is asked to do and everything that this board wants to do. And if nothing else, just getting it all on paper is is amazing. You're really wrangling here. So with that, I'll ask my colleagues if anybody has any comments or thoughts or ideas, or is this a terrible approach? I don't know. Wendy, what do you think?
I think I'm a little unclear how it works. So is the idea that that you all are sort of bringing us these lists and saying these are the things that we think we should prioritize, but you all vote? Or are you narrowing, or are you just giving us all of these different things and then we are talking amongst ourselves? Like, I don't really understand how we step through the process.
Yeah. So I think that, frankly, through all of the plans that you've worked on and identified through Vision Zero, Complete Streets, and was
Green
the
routes,
and the
green
green
routes.
routes. Yeah. There already are so many priorities. And honestly, what happens is staff is sort of going in all these different directions, trying to see if they can capture these, kind of make these projects, and it's become incredibly, and it just isn't working, right? So I think that the town's already identified a list of priorities through these plans, and I think it's for us to talk about, now that there's this full suite of priorities, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 that we want to move forward and say, we're working on these next year, and then it'll be these, and we might even only be looking out 2 years. Maybe ultimately it'll grow to 3, and then we can even build a full CIP through it, where we have design dollars and then capital dollars, and it's kind of rolling forward that way in a very programmatic, kind of predictable way. So I would say that there's already been a lot of work done to identify those. I did have a conversation with Jonathan about developing a rubric that could help us all going forward, so that there could be some sort of data and scoring that would kind of help equalize the rankings. And that's something that Amy actually created for the traffic calming, which I think was really helpful, because there were so many requests and really wanting to focus on safety first, not necessarily the oldest request, but where are we going to have the biggest impact. So I think that ultimately a rubric will be helpful, but there may be a project or 2 that the board already feels like this is the one that we think is most important, for the next couple years, because we've been talking about it for so long. So I feel like we could work with you either way.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I mean, I think we generally, at least I haven't, since I've been on the board, been part of the process of picking projects, right? Like, you come to us with projects, we approve projects, we do talk about kind of some priorities, but not at the level of actual selection. So it sounds like that's a little different in this.
And we will come with recommendations, but again, I think there's already a huge pool to draw from.
Thanks.
And you and Wendy and the whole board will help us, when you identify a street or 2 streets, we'll have a conversation. You'll help us choose or select a tier to help us work backwards for that project. Like the commissioner said, you could be on the fence. Is it a tier 2 or is it a tier 3? Does it require the formation of a design review committee, or does the board feel that a public meeting with the neighborhood or multiple meetings with the neighborhood would be sufficient? So it helps us shape the timeline for the project, which we've kind of established roughly those dates, and it would then help us be able to predict, like the commissioner said in the CIP, like if it is a tier 2, we're going to have to set the expectation that that's really going to take potentially up to 2 years to get started or constructed
And it may,
versus
and
it's
it may not. Oh, well, constructed, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
constructed. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Another piece, Wendy, is we're really trying to avoid the situation where a project comes to the transportation board and it might be the first time you're seeing it and you're now taking a vote and there's public opposition. And you're kind of trying to weed through what are the conversations, what are we trying to solve? And so that's we don't want that situation. We don't want that for you. We don't want that for the public. And I think having the process, it doesn't mean that we'll be able to, with all of these projects, meet everybody's needs all the time, but at least with the process is really clear.
Richard.
Ryan, thank you. Erin and Dan and Sam. So I'm the rookie on the board, and I'll use myself as the guinea pig. I've been working on the Hayes School thing. So we had a presentation come, Erin, about around August. Resident Brad Verda brought forward the need for some traffic calming around the Hayes School. My apology, and I asked Brian if I could, help him out, and I kind of hit the ground running. But I've gone before Safe Routes to School. I've gone before pedestrian. I've gone before Commission of Disability. I got a PTO meeting next week with the neighborhood to get more public input. And the story is I'm developing a plan, getting public feedback on those plans, and then getting with the engineering team. Is that process that I'm going through correct on like a new project that comes about that I decided to take on? And does that mess up the process?
No. What would happen is this board, with staff would say, okay, well, what are our priorities? And if the answer was, we really want to look at Elliott Street and we want Elliott to be included in this traffic calming. Frankly, Elliott is a street that we're looking at with traffic calming. And so the board with staff would set that as one of the priorities. And then there would be a public engagement process where there would be 1 or 2 representatives from the transportation board and staff. And then there would be some other folks from the neighborhood assigned to sort of work through a community engagement process, but really led with more direction and involvement, sort of a decision from the board and staff. This is a priority we're going to spend time on moving forward in our resources, and and then going through those channels. So it wouldn't be staff running design review or engagement and advocacy on its own. It wouldn't be a single board member or subcommittee member, because you have subcommittees that report up to you. Doing that on their own, it really would be that we've set these as our priorities, and that's how we're gonna structure our public engagement processes together. So that is a little different, Richard, I think, kind of where you are at with that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, make sure either I'm on the right path, or if I'm not on the right path, how do you bring a new project like Hayes School properly that falls into the fold with, I know it will fit in with other traffic calming measures such as Elliott Street beyond the Hayes School area. But I just want to make sure that, I'm keeping a good relationship with the engineering department and not being a pain in the ass. And just making sure I go about it in a diligent manner. And it stays, we stay structured with the process.
I'll speak up. I just say I appreciate the efforts and I appreciate the help. And I think we can work together on all these things. And if Elliott Street falls out of it, it's something that makes sense to everybody. We want to see traffic calming every year. So that's an easier one for us too. So yeah, I appreciate all your effort, Richard.
Thank you, Dan.
Jonathan.
Yeah, before I guess my point, just real quick on that, I think that's where a rubric or a readiness score or whatever you want to call it, allows something like that to come into the system. And you can realize the potential just through that scoring. And then it either jumps to the top or it falls into the middle, or it says, oh, maybe it's not everything we thought it was going to be. And and theoretically, if that's all, if the criteria that are created are strong, it'll work regularly. So that's that. I guess this is everything that I was hoping it would be. I guess my question on it is, what happens when the inevitable school parking or MBTA issue or 40B project or whatever happens to be that's not on our radar isn't something that's really the engineering staff's responsibility on a day-to-day basis, but does take up a lot of their time, comes into this, and then the other stuff starts to get pushed out, pushed on with that. Is that going to be built into this? Is that just something we're going to have to continue to deal with? Is that out of our control so much that we just can't?
It's something we're going to have to continue to deal with, and I think that we're going to have to be realistic about what we're taking on for a new project, in particular because we have so many huge projects right now that are in different stages. You know, this community had one tip project every 20 years, and you know, now we have three candidates simultaneously. So I think that, you know, that's a situation where internally, you know, we are going to have to then deal with some things that might be emergencies, you know, et cetera, adjust our time accordingly, and then kind of report back to you and communicate with the transportation board if it impacts any of our scheduling on, you know, kind of other projects that we have moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things do come from other boards and commissions. How much lead time do you usually get from them on those items? Like, we know at some point there'll be another school that gets rehabbed after Pierce is done.
We try to be involved, honestly, as early as we can be. And, you know, Meredith mentioned earlier that the Economic Development and Planning has been having bi-weekly meetings with transportation, which honestly has been helpful because it's given them a heads up on some of those development projects. Because whether it's a BHA project, you know, they're big projects, and obviously we've done a lot of support for, you know, with the Kittleson work. Staff has been very involved in that as well, and so the communication has helped with less surprises, but still, that's somewhat in the nature of what we do, that, you know, we often have to adjust and deal with kind of some high priority, both projects or situations that come before us. I'm not really answering that. I'm just saying we're going to have to be communicative.
No, I think you are. I think you are.
doing.
And, you know, the answer is, you know, there's not much that can change in that arena.
If I might take a stab, Jonathan, I think this is where the transportation board's priorities and the transportation division's priorities have to kind of match up. And that's where the staff's discretion. And we've always sort of said, you know, the staff has certain things that they have to do, and then there's certain things that come to us. What I think this set of policies is trying to get at is allowing staff to have the bandwidth to do the things that they have to do on a day-to-day basis, like those parking permits and like stuff from other departments, and also allow bandwidth for priorities of this board. Because I think what's been happening is that there's a little too much of one and not enough of another. And that's why we get 31 traffic calming requests that just pile and pile up.
But I think even like, you know, the 40B stuff, right? So, I mean, inevitably, you know, we hem and haw and we spend 40 minutes on it, and, you know, we complain about the fact that that we don't have control on it, and then inevitably we write the same letter.
Yep.
With maybe
I mean,
one or
that's
two
on me,
minor
really.
changes sometimes. So I mean, is that something that really needs that time every?
Well, I mean,
that
look
we
at
get
a lot of that's on me.
once every other year or once a year?
What I think we should do, and I haven't talked to anybody about this yet, is move those to the consent agenda with just a standard letter that we all kind of agree on in advance. And then if somebody really wants to take something off, we can talk about it in full.
Yeah.
But
Because even,
again,
because even that makes a big difference.
That's something for you.
You'll never get school parking permits in that consent agenda though.
We don't do those all the time though, thankfully, right?
You weren't here 5 years ago. We were doing them all the time.
Darn, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was a great time. Yeah.
So Richard, if I can also respond to your question, which I should have done. So how I see this kind of playing out is once a year or so, probably around this time of year, we will select a set of projects and prioritize them for our action over the next 12 months. And at that point, if you wanted to do something like the Hayes School work that you're doing now, that would be the time for you to sort of advocate for that. And in the background, we would have the scoring for that project kind of already done. So this is sort of how the Boston MPO works, and the commissioner and I both sit on it. Over the course of a year, projects get submitted. The MPO staff review them and score them. The scoring is based on a criteria that's set by the board. And then around April, all of those come in, and then they get sort of thrown into the hopper and prioritized. But there's also the total amount of money available for all projects is also an input. So what ends up happening is you try to match projects with dollars and time. And it's not easy, but it is resource or at least fiscally constrained. And what I don't want us to do is sort of what you're doing is all this work. I don't know if we can afford it because I don't know if the town meeting will approve the CIP for us. So what we have to kind of do going forward is make sure that anything that we put our weight behind, we have money to implement, because otherwise we just risk not being able to do it. And to your point, Wendy, this will be a work in progress at best. And it's not like we're setting any of this in stone. We're moving infrastructure, as I like to say. We will work through this and deal with the edge cases that come up as they come up, because they will come up. And yeah, it could be that we try this and we realize it doesn't work and then we go back. But I do think at the very least, this will give this board more autonomy in selecting the projects that it does, instead of just Dan and the commissioner bringing them to us and saying, hey, we want to do this. When I was first on this board, the then administrator, Todd Corain, was famous for that. We never got to pick any projects that we wanted to do. He just sort of brought them to us. And that works. It works well. But I think this is another level of effort that I want this board to try to make so that we can start getting projects that are important to each of us. And that's the real benefit for us. I think this is actually going to be more work for the staff, because they're going to have to now listen to all of our politicking on the phone, trying to get our projects scored higher. But hey, we're all human.
Thank you, Brian. I think that's really helpful, but I think you're right around the projects it will, but I think that together when we make those decisions, when we get all those requests all the time that are just adding new requests onto our plate at town hall, we're going to say, no, we have our work plan for the year, and that'll have to be considered for a future year. So I'm actually hoping that it helps staff on that end of it.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
So everybody can look at it all went in late, and I'm so sorry. It was after the holidays, and you know, we had some staff out, but the deck that we shared with you is available, and a document kind of with written framework for the community engagement. So please take a look at that, and then reach out with any comments, and then we'll have some time at a future meeting, Brian, to talk through projects.
And can I just ask a quick question about the
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
the list of within these different projects, when you have like your list of streets, right, that need to be dealt with, are we talking, is that generally the entire length? So like I saw Cypress and Chestnut on there. Are we talking sort of, do we assume that's like the length of the street, or not?
It is not always.
No.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, Cypress in this case is sort of both directions from Route 9. But sometimes it's a length from, X to Y.
All right.
And I think that also, that scope then gets into the resources that are available. So maybe we'll trade scope for resources if it gets most of a project done. This is where you have to start doing a little trade-off. But I do think for lots of projects, there are natural sort of limits, and that's kind of where
Yeah. I was just more wanted to make sure I'm interpreting your list correctly when I look at that, when I look at it.
Yeah, and some of that's from the plans themselves, so they'll have the whole length, and so we could definitely help pass some stuff down as needed to kind of in bite-sized chunks, or chunks that are affordable and project ready, or project where they make sense.
Or if a neighborhood put in a traffic calming request just for their specific street, maybe we would do a little more.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, we have that discretion, I guess. So next steps on this is we will come back to this at a future meeting to talk about it a little more, refine it a little bit more, and maybe we'll start with a couple of projects and just see how they might score. Or we could look at scoring criteria and then see what's important to us. And Commissioner, maybe the MPO scoring would be a nice place to start with that, because
Something simpler, but yes.
simpler, yeah, please. But that's been worked on for many years.
Yes, agreed.
Simpler. So, and by the way, the MPO allocates federal transportation dollars in the region, so it's legit. I say I serve on it. I send people to those meetings. I don't serve on it anymore, but Erin does, and she's a glutton.
The important ones.
And you are very good at it. Any other questions on this one? If not, is there any new business? Anyone know when our next meeting is?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
21st.
I think we're due for 1 in 2 weeks. I know you sent the list out of potential meeting dates all year. I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
January
You didn't memorize it,
27th.
Brian?
Sorry?
You didn't memorize it? Write it on your wrist?
I might have, but at 9:30 at night, I've already forgotten.
Yeah, the next one on the list, 21st.
21st. Okay. Well, then we'll see you on the 21st. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, without objection, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Good night.